Okay, hopefully I can make this in one part. I'm not entirely sure exactly how much space my phone has. It's not really my phone. My aunt gave me her old phone. Lots of noise in the background because it's hot. So got everything going to try to make it not hot. Anyways, I'm exhausted, and it's easy to see why. So I this morning, right around 1:40 a.m., give or take, I received a message from my oldest aunt. Now, she's very adamant about me not saying her name. That much is very important to her. So I'm going to try not to do that. I'm going to try not to mention her in any way, shape, or form. But I want to show you everything that went on and the sort of severity. Now, time and again, I come across people who think that sharing family drama is it's trashy. It's trashy to share family drama, but this isn't really family drama. If I was just, blatantly calling somebody out, showing their name and saying, look what they did and everything like that, then that would be calling out family drama. But obviously I haven't really done that, and there's a lot at stake here, and that much is very certain. The more eyes we get on situations like this, the better. So let's go with the absolute facts before any sort of opinions can come in and start to ruin things a little bit. Reminder: in late 2017, I was admitted into the psychiatric inpatient program at Jefferson Barracks Veterans Affairs Medical Center in St. Louis, Missouri. They said I was in critical psychiatric condition, and they were afraid that I wasn't going to last even one more month. That it's highly likely that I would have perished. I would have passed away. I would have died if I had not gone in there. This is what they said. What the doctor said. What the medical professionals said. Mental health care professionals. Everything of the sort. That's what they said. So they made that very clear, and they spent an entire year after I was let out of the psychiatric inpatient program. After about a week, they let me out, and I went to therapy 5 days a week, and most of that was them pounding into my head the severity of the situation. The problem was, during my previous marriage, I had had a panic attack, and panic attacks, they're not that big of a deal unless you have a family history of heart problems like my family does. My grandfather on my father's side, he died of his first ever heart attack, and apparently that is pretty much what happens to my oldest aunt's youngest cousin fairly recently to her father-in-law. I'm not sure if it was the man's first ever heart attack, but he didn't survive. So heart attacks kind of come out of nowhere, you know. And my grandfather on my father's side, he didn't get a second chance to survive his first ever heart attack. It was one and done. So you can look up independently of me or the conclusions of my medical professionals or anything. You don't have to talk to them. You can actually just Google the words, can a panic attack turn into a heart attack, yes or no? And you can very clearly see the answer to that question. So with as high of a stress as I was under at that point in time, that was what they were afraid of. They were afraid that my panic attack was going to turn into a heart attack, and I wouldn't get a second chance to try to survive a heart attack. You could say that I had an unhealthy lifestyle or something like that. You know, obviously, if I was drinking heavily, if I was heavy into drugs, if I wasn't taking care of myself, if I had a bad diet or something, then maybe that would have been all my fault. But it was 2017. I had just been released from Army Senior Reserve Officer Training Corps. I had passed all of their requirements. If you don't know about it, then there's two ways to become, well, there's several ways to become an officer within the United States military. You can go to one of the academies like West Point or the Naval Academy, etc. And you do that whenever you graduate high school, and then get accepted into the academy, and they train you while you get your bachelor's degree. And as soon as you're finished with your bachelor's degree, you can begin your first day active duty as an officer in the military. But you can also just get a bachelor's degree on your own and then join, and they'll send you to officer candidate school. You do not go to officer candidate school if you have already attended one of the academies. Well, there's an additional option, and that is to go to Senior Reserve Officer Training Corps. Officer Candidate School is largely known as essentially officer boot camp. It's the officer's version of boot camp. And they definitively have standards that's higher than regular boot camp. You can argue about this all you want, but they literally, at least for the Army, have a higher APFT standards during the time that I was involved with them. So if you had to get a score on the Army physical fitness test of like 50% or something like that in boot camp, the requirement for OCS or SROTC or the academies would be a 60% or higher. They literally have higher standards. You know, you can kick and scream and cry all you want. Obviously, I've dealt with a lot of people who don't like officers, and will make a bunch of bold claims about how they're all weak and stupid and whatever. And that's why I'm going with the absolute facts of the situation. What is verifiable, what you can verify on your own, what I can verify on my own. So I went with them late 2014. I joined up with them, became a contracted cadet, and I was denied a commission whenever in late 2017. So I was coming right out of this. I had passed all requirements, but they denied me a commission on mental health standards. They said that I didn't meet their mental health standards, therefore they couldn't offer me a job. I had passed the interview. I had passed their boot camp, and then whenever it came time for them to give me a job, they said, I'm not going to give you a job based on mental health standards. So that was that. It was all over with. So obviously I was taking care of myself. Obviously I wasn't doing any drugs. They passed all their drug tests and everything, and they get pretty close to you. There's not really a chance for you to try to cheat on the drug test or anything. I was military police while I was active duty in the Navy, and I never got that close to the people that were doing the drug test. But the people in SROTC, my goodness, they get right up on you. They basically get, directly behind you and then peer over your shoulder. That is wild. So I wasn't on drugs. I obviously wasn't drinking, especially not at Southern Illinois University, Edwardsville. It's ranked almost dead last on the list of party schools. So I was taking good physical care of myself, and hell, I can show you my bank account and how much money I was spending at like Whole Foods and stuff like that. I was, so it sort of eliminates all other factors that could possibly have led me into a situation where I was at risk of a heart attack, except for the stress that I was under. And that stress, you've got all of the other cadets, they've got plenty of things going on in their lives. None of them was as bad as me. So, am I weak? Am I prone to stress? Something like that? Not according to my medical professionals. They eliminated that sort of factor. Can he like not handle stress or something like that? Is he weaker than all other human beings? Does he need to go to some stress management class? The answer was no. That is that's their view, and I once again offer anybody my full unedited medical records if they want to verify any of these pieces of the information. It took them a full year of me going pretty much all of 2018, a little bit of 2019. After I was released from the psychiatric inpatient program, it took them that length of time to pound into my head that my relationships with other people was doing this to me. They were doing this to me. It was very clear that I was doing everything in my power to live as healthy as I could, to stay in as good a shape as I could stay in, and it was these other people that were mistreating me so much. It was in fact the other people. It wasn't that in fact their fault, and it wasn't just Veterans Affairs that was telling me that. It was the Violence Prevention Center in Belleville, Illinois, which is a civilian organization. And I was married to an active duty person at the time, so I was also seeing a psychologist at Scott Air Force Base in the general Shiloh area of Illinois, not too far away from the St. Clair Square Mall. So you can see, it took a very long time for them to pound this in my head. I was very resistant to this idea. At first it was just me being like, how could somebody mistreat me, and then that's what happens to me, something like that. Also, I thought that Veterans Affairs was blaming my family because they didn't want to say it was their fault, because they didn't want to pay me any disability or anything. but and I thought that Scott Air Force Base was doing the same thing, but whenever the abuse counseling that I was taking at the Violence Prevention Center in Belleville, Illinois, whenever they began echoing the exact same things, the exact same conclusions unprompted, that's whenever I finally, my ears perked up and I began to listen. Like I said, it took them a full year for them to convince me of all this. It's very clear. It's very crystal clear, with as much evidence as a human being can come up with on this planet, that that the relationships, my loved ones, my family, some of my so-called friends, my ex-wife, these sort of people, they were mistreating me extremely badly. Veterans often get mistreated. That's what I learned. I had to go to therapy 5 days a week, coming out of the psychiatric inpatient program. Once a week I would meet with my psychiatrist. Once a week I would meet with the what they called the interpersonal skills program at the time with the Veterans Affairs. They also wanted to make sure that I was taking care of myself, so they put me in the VA MOVE program, and eliminate that as a possible contributing factor. I met once a week with a psychologist from Scott Air Force Base, and I met once a week with an abuse counselor at the Violence Prevention Center in Belleville, Illinois. Like I said, I got all the medical records and everything. You can verify this on your own. So that's what I was doing for that full year. This wasn't a person that was under so much stress that they were nearly driven to suicide. This was a person that was that was under so much stress that 3 separate organizations full of medical professionals all agreed that that I was under so much stress that my body nearly shut down, and killed me against my will and everything like that. If all things would have continued, then you could have locked me in a padded cell without any tools whatsoever, and I would have still had a heart attack and died. That's the conclusion that they spent so long hammering into my head. This morning at about 1:40 a.m. I received a message on Facebook from my oldest aunt. You can say that this is me trying to stir up shit. You can say that this is me being trashy and spreading spreading sort of family drama and stuff like that. But the absolute facts of the situation is that these people nearly put my life in danger. These people nearly ended my life with nothing but mistreatment. And it can happen to others. I'm not extra specially vulnerable to this. There's no evidence to state that I'm extra specially vulnerable to this, that somehow or another I'm super duper weak and everybody else is just normal. That's not what any medical professional has said. There's zero evidence for that argument. I'm not Superman. These people are not kryptonite. These people can endanger anyone. And if it's happening to me, then it can happen to other people. So going through these sorts of events and and dissecting them and getting as many eyes on them as humanly possible is a life-saving event. So you can cry, you can kick, you can scream, you can call me all sorts of names, but this is a life-saving event. If other people go through something similar, deal with people that are as bad or worse than the people that have gotten me into the situation in my life. If other people are going through this, then seeing something like this can save their lives. So again, you can cry, you can kick, you can scream, you can call me all sorts of names, you can say that I'm doing this for this reason or that reason, but you cannot argue with the absolute facts of the situation. If you think that my medical professionals are wrong, prove them wrong. Come up with some sort of evidence. Argue with them yourself. Head up to the VA, Jefferson Barracks. Come up there with as much evidence as your hands can carry and start yelling at them and saying that they're wrong about this. But be sure to do that for Scott Air Force Base. Good luck getting into the door. And be sure that to do that with the Violence Prevention Center at Belleville, Illinois as well. You really have to work hard to prove these people incorrect. So that's what this is all about, is that this is a life-saving measure. So that's why it's important to review these things. So this the message that I got at 1:40 a.m. this morning was related to, it was about a Father's Day message that I sent my father. Since my father has a preliminary diagnosis of clinical level narcissism, according to my medical professionals, since that is the case, I'm trying to involve as many people with that diagnosis as humanly possible. I'm trying to do that for his sake, because every clinical level narcissist believes that they are wholesale unique from everyone else. They believe that either they are some kind of an alien, or they believe that everyone else is an alien and they're the only human being out there. They were not going to say these things out loud, but essentially inside their heart, that's kind of what they believe. That they are 100% unique among the worlds, that they walk this world alone. And so I'm attempting to invite them into something like the National Association of Mental Illness, NAMI, stuff like that, to try to drive home the point that they're not alone on this, that narcissism is a well-studied phenomenon. It has a way to get from soup to nuts. It has a way to get from start to finish. It has a way to get from being sick to having the cure. And nothing bad happens when you treat narcissism, but lots of good things happen, and they have no evidence whatsoever that that is not the case. So as a result, each time that I talk to my father, I also talk to my mother, because she has the same preliminary diagnosis from my medical professionals, and so far they both have avoided going to any medical professionals on their own, and because of that, I've given them infinite resources to do that for free. I've repeatedly sent them links and everything each and every time that they have an additional excuse about how they could never, do it or anything. If they say they don't have enough time, I ask them, what are they doing that's eating up all their time? Can I help them in any way? Maybe I can cook a couple meals for them so that they don't have time to, they don't need to cook their own meals. and maybe that can save them enough time to squeeze in a quick, counseling session. And then they move on to a different excuse. They say, well, they don't have the gas money to get to somewhere. I find them someplace that takes appointments over the phone. They say they don't have the money for it. I find them a free resource, and I find things that have all three of those things. I offer to clean up their homes if that's what they're spending all their time doing, instead of getting some assistance, some help. I try my best to make them feel better about possibly being mentally ill. Calling somebody crazy is an insult. So the Dr. Daniel Amen, he champions SPECT scans, SPECT. He champions those scans because in his view, you can take a SPECT scan of somebody's brain and actually identify what mental illnesses that they have. He's been running that practice. He's been championing this fight for years and years, 20 years, 30 years, 40 years, maybe more. And so I'm trying to let them know that this is, a SPECT scan is kind of like an x-ray, but it's for the brain, so that means that a mental illness is a physical illness. It is no different from having a broken bone. And my father has broken his arm at some point in time. If somebody said you had a broken arm, he didn't take offense to that. So I'm trying to let him know that it's the same thing. Each time that my mother has had a headache or a tummy ache and she's taken aspirin or Tums respectively, it's the exact same thing. Mental illnesses, according to Dr. Daniel Amen at the very least, are physical illnesses. So I'm trying to make them feel better about this and try not to just outright call them crazy or something like that. But just to stop anybody from saying that, oh, you're whitewashing history and obviously you're doing something super duper awful and everything, and you're editing these things, and obviously you've done something to deserve this if they're treating you this way. As if like every single person in a developing country that's starving to death, obviously, the children starving to death in developing countries, they must have done something to deserve it, right? But no, of course that's not the case. What was it? Peltzer or whatever, the author of A Child Called It. Obviously, he was just another kid. He didn't do anything to deserve the abuse that he suffered. Somebody just tortured their kid just a couple of years ago in Jerseyville, Illinois, where I was actually born, in that hospital. What did the kid do to deserve that, right? So you can say I deserve it because of what I was wearing or whatever, but the medical professionals, the powers that be, are not going to agree with you. You're going to have to get them to agree with that, to really make that argument in a way that has any weight, that counts at all. So putting this together, I edited out my aunt's name as often as possible. She's very adamant about never being mentioned as much as humanly possible, so I tried to adhere to those requests. But it's fairly easy for you to figure out who my parents are. There are a million different ways for you to do so. So while I started this attempting to hide their identities as well, eventually I decided that it's kind of a fruitless endeavor. So I'm not going to make it easy for you to find these people, nor is it going to be conducive to the situation for you to track these down, form some sort of angry mob, and then try to, send them threatening messages. Do not harass these people. That's of course not going to be the point of all of this, but this is a life-saving measure to those going through similar incidents. So if you have anybody going through similar incidents, you can go ahead and share this video with them. I don't think that anything on my YouTube is monetized, so I'm not saying that for, you know, monetary gain or anything. You know, this is a life-saving measure. That's the thing that I have to come back to, because it's an undeniable fact that can be independently verified. So I'm going to play in its entirety for those who are going to claim that somehow or another I have done, you know, something wrong and I'm only giving you part of the story. I'm going to play in its entirety the Father's Day message that I sent my mother and my father yesterday, and then we'll get into the response. So strap in. It's going to be a long one. It's already a long one, but all this is necessary. So you can just skip forward. You're going to see a little bar from left to right, side to side, and you'll see exactly how these things get put together. You'll be able to fast forward through the video and see everything. So let's see. First and foremost, the email. Happy late Father's Day. Good afternoon. Sorry for the late message, Dad, but as you know, it's very difficult to write to you. Always remember what you said on my 34th birthday. You don't believe that I wake up every day asking myself what I can do to improve my life, and even if I had a camera on me 24/7, you would never believe that I'm doing that, regardless of the evidence. That's what he. That's my response to him on my 34th birthday. I said, if I get some really good internet connection and start streaming my life 24/7, you know, you can watch it at 16 times speed and get it done in an hour, and you'd be able to actually see whether or not I'm doing the thing that you think that I'm not doing, you know. But he said he was never going to believe that I'm doing that, even whenever he's looking at it with his own eyes. He will never believe the evidence. And you'll always treat me poorly until I convince you, and I cannot convince you. Those were your words. Yes, this is what you stated, even if those aren't your precise words. This is an email between a child and his parents, not a court of law. It's something that he likes to do. He likes to do some word lawyering. He says, well, I didn't say that you weren't enough, you know, and I didn't say that you weren't doing enough. I just said that you should do extra things on top of what you're already doing. And I don't have those requirements for anybody else, and I certainly don't have those requirements for myself, you know. So he'll say that I'm not doing enough. He'll say that I'm not enough of a person to be treated how he'd like to be treated. But he'll use other words, and then he'll do some real word lawyering, and all it does is prove as a barrier to communication. All of my medical professionals are in agreement with that. So of course, if your father treated you like this, you would have chosen to live with your mother instead. You even cited this precise reason that you ran away to Florida whenever I was 3 years old last time that we spoke. You said that that your mother would criticize you if you were in college, criticize you if you were outside college at a job, and you'd get criticized by my mom when you got there for not spending enough time with her and me. You felt like you couldn't do anything right, so you ran away. And now you're not treating me how you'd like to be treated. And when you've been given the opportunity to learn how, you've been radio silent. Objectively, you're hard to communicate with. Objectively, I'm opening all roads to communicate with. All roads to communication, and easing those means as much as possible. We can both independently verify this with medical and mental health professionals, though I don't expect that you'll be doing that. I never understand how you can get a new phone and learn how to use it, drive a new car, learning its quirks as you go, enter a new building and learn how to navigate it, and to do all those activities much more quickly with the phone tech support, the previous car owner, or a tour guide respectively. Even having fun doing so, but treating people the way you'd like to be treated and having someone there to teach you how to do so is the one skill that you believe that you alone are magically incapable of learning, all without a speck of evidence that you are in fact this strange alien incapable of learning this single skill at the exception of all other skills. And you won't explain your thought process, so the rest of us are left wondering, instead of walking you through your thought process to test your assumptions and help you feel better about it. Either way, I'm giving you a wonderful gift by gaining access to a family therapist and offering their services to you and recording a message as well. Happy Father's Day. I hope you had a good one. I love you both, my father and my mother, unconditionally. Very respectfully, your son, Matthew Roger Motley. Postscript, P.S. Remember, you can always play back my messages at 2 times speed. It's how I check my own messages for errors. This eliminates any excuse that you somehow don't have the time to listen to my messages. They've used that excuse before. Whenever it comes to text and email, there are myriad ways to have a robotic voice read them to you for free and at multiple speeds as well. Again, I am bending over backwards to open up verifiably healthy means of communications with you both. So that's the start of it. We'll go ahead and listen to that Father's Day message in its entirety, and I am going to skip 5 seconds ahead each time that I am about to mention my oldest aunt's name or somebody else's name. Had to listen to it, write these times down and everything. But whenever it comes to my parents' name, they're very easy to find. So I thought about, trying to dig through it. But the last time I did this, a couple slipped through, and I'm just doing the best as I can here. So here we go. The entirety of the Father's Day message, with only cuts to skip names. Here we go. Hey, Dad. Happy Father's Day. Yet again, I'll be sending this to both you and my mother because I need you two to understand that you're not alone, that you're not the only one who's acting like this. You're not the only one who's doing these things. You're not the only one that you're not the only ones that are hurting other people, and you don't understand why. And each and every time that you're asked, you make up an entirely different story and change your story every time, which is how law enforcement officials, that's how they, find out that people are lying whenever they, they tell a different story every single time that you ask. It's because there's a little gremlin in your head. It's called mental illness. It's not all mental illnesses. The preliminary diagnosis from my medical professionals is that you both have a clinical level narcissism. It needs clinical intervention to clear up. It's a relatively normal thing. Psychologists call it the defense mechanism. Something that Sigmund Freud came across way back when. Children, they can't fight. They can't defend themselves. So they have many ways of running away. Now, children can't actually run away. Adults have longer legs, so they can't actually run away from their problems, and they can't win a fight with an adult either. So whenever these problems happen to children, they run away in other ways. So my mother repeatedly talks about the many, many things that happened in her childhood, but it happened to her and her sister. It's a very common response, but everybody is different. So my mother instead developed narcissism, and it got so bad that now it's at that point where it requires medical intervention in order to fix up. Same thing happened to you. So you both found each other somehow or another. This is a well-studied phenomenon. It's been done to death. It's been, you are not unique. You are not an alien. You are not something that, someone who has problems or has done things that are so bad that they can't be undone. You've not done things that are so horrible that you are now irredeemable. There's nothing that can happen to you, that could possibly undo the damage that you've already done. You can verify this yourself. You can look at many, many people, politicians, people in prison, stuff like that, who have done things worse than you, who have gotten off through one technicality or the other, and now they're free to go. You have to ask yourself, what did you do that's worse than them? Whatever comes to thoughts inside your head, maybe you've had a thought. Maybe you've been punishing yourself for 50 years because you've held a baby and the first thing that you thought of was, man, what if I just dropped this baby right here and right now? And you're thinking to yourself, my God, that's how horrible I am inside my head, and you've been punishing yourself for 50 years. It's called an intrusive thought. It's something that everybody has. You can look them up yourself. You can see these things. Whenever people will get near the edge of something, they'll think to themselves, what happens if I jump off? It's called the call of the void, also called the Thanatos drive. This is all human beings have this. You're not unique. You're not different. You're not so much worse than everybody else because of thoughts inside your own head. You're not an alien. You're not so unbelievably different than everybody else on the planet that your specific problems have no cure. There are programs that have worked over and over and over again ad nauseum and can fix both of you. So that's why I continue to talk to both of you so that you both understand. If there is a group chat, or if there's a group of other people that I can contact and bring more people in on the conversation, then I will. So that you know that you're not the only one suffering from this. And you'll be able to see people in every phase of recovery, every phase of, being able to get away from this, to get over this, to get this treated and everything. You'll be able to do that. And so I continue to talk to both of you. But, of course, this is the Father's Day message, so it's for Drew Allen Motley. So, having two of you that I talked to, two of you suffering from the same preliminary diagnosis, because you both refuse to go into the doctors yourselves and get this thing all fixed, my father, the Drew, this is who is the message to, and, Mom, she's just a listening in, but, my, Drew always goes on and on about how, after his father died, he went and he had, a therapy, and it didn't work, and that one therapist said that he don't need no more therapy. Well, that was one therapist, and then over and over again, you keep doing stuff that's wrong, and that's against the law, and that, you've got all of my medical records that are saying that what you're doing is not the right thing to do. And then you avoid all of the other doctors. Well, you already found one that agrees with you, so might as well hide from all the ones that might disagree with you, right? So, you just hide in your little hole, and, Drew's gotten real good. Running, hiding, and that's what Drew does. So, this is the story as far as I've been able to put it together, apparently. According to some of the books I've read and whatnot. And hey, if you don't believe me, like I said, you've got my medical records. You have the contact information of these medical professionals and whatnot that are telling you this way or that. So you can actually go and call them yourself. You don't have to take my word for it. On my 34th birthday, Mom, you don't know this, but on my 34th birthday, Drew gave me a call. He says, hey, you think you're right about this, but you're wrong, you know. He's yelling at me and everything on my 34th birthday. This is what this man does. And, you know, I ask him for any amount of evidence, and he just comes up with nothing. Well, he said, well, this conversation is the evidence. As if this conversation is worth more than the opinions of all these people that have gone to medical school for a billion years, you know. And these people have worked their asses off to get there, and apparently, according to Drew Allen Motley, they didn't learn nothing. And the last conclusion that he came to was that, hey, you know, Matthew Roger Motley, you are so insane that you managed to convince all of your medical professionals from 3 separate places, from the Veterans Affairs and Scott Air Force Base and the Violence Prevention Center of Belleville, Illinois. You managed to convince them that what I did, which was against the law, was somehow wrong. And, you know, that you staying in school, not doing drugs, and, you know, obeying the law, you're actually somehow or another the good guy, you know. And I asked him for any amount of evidence, and of course he comes up with nothing at all. He refuses to get any amount of evidence, and that's exactly what my email was at the start of this year, that New Year's email. This is your invitation, both of you, to go and get any amount of evidence whatsoever. There is a right, there is a wrong. There are people who decide these things. They're the ones that make the car that I'm driving. I'm not driving my car. I'm driving, you know, one of my grandpa's work trucks. My car's on the mend right now. But, so, you know, the person that made this car, you know, these are scientists and everything put together. The people that, you know, took crude oil out of the ground, refined it into petroleum. They're on the scientific side. You know, academics, they study this each and every day. This sound capturing device on my phone, the phone itself, the satellites that are going to go into space and they're going to get this message to you, they're put together by the powers that be in this world. You know, these are the ones that make the world move, and it's up to you to prove that they are wrong. Of course, if Drew actually believed the kind of shit that he was saying, then he would say, you know, he would call my doctors and be like, you're treating a dangerous patient. He's wasting your time. He's you know, lying to you about everything, and actually, you know, everything that he says is wrong and everything, and you need to watch out for that. He would start to work together with them, and then them and him, they could work together, and we could really drill down into what's wrong with Matthew Roger Motley. My goodness, that guy, he's been through 2 branches of the military, got 2 different degrees of tertiary education so far. He did it faster than I was able to do, and he did it with a hell of a lot less resources than I was able to do. You know, he's staying at school, he's not doing drugs. Obviously, he's the bad guy here, right? Of course. And that's the reason why he hasn't called them, is because he doesn't believe the bullshit that's coming out of his mouth. He's lying, and he's coming up with the quickest lie in the situation. So here's what you don't know, Drew, is that after that last email that I forwarded to you, everything that you said, Mom, Dad has seen it, everybody on Facebook has seen it, I went ahead and made a video about it and everything. The more eyes we have on the situation, the more we can get. We can drill down. We can use the wisdom of the masses to drill down and figure out what's right and what's wrong. The more eyes we have on the situation, the better. And I know that all you 2 want to do is isolate me. And why? Because you want to hurt me. The problem is that you've got all of my medical records that's saying that you succeeded in hurting me, and that I'm not unique. I'm not somehow a person with a bunch of weaknesses that only you have the key to. You're doing that much damage to everybody, and you have the medical records that said that you nearly murdered your son. And you are doing that much damage to everyone around you because I'm just another person. And I know that you don't want to believe the medical records, but you also haven't come up with a speck of evidence that they're incorrect. Not one speck. And I gave you many, many ways to do so for free. And I continue to offer you ways to do so for free, to get definitively right and wrong. You both want to hurt me, but you won't believe the several hundred pages of documents that said you've succeeded. You succeeded in nearly murdering your son. And that's the amount of damage that you're doing to everybody, because your son is just a human being, just like you, just like everybody else. You're doing that much damage to everyone around you at all points in time. And if you want to prove those medical records wrong, I've given you many, many free ways to do so. So, this is the best Happy Father's Day ever. Because, for free, your son has set everything up with some family counselors. I sent you both the thing. You know, like I said, Drew, you don't know this, but after that last email, I said, well, Mama, I can talk to you and your sister as long as there's a family therapist present. And guess what she did? On the next family outing, she came ahead and she said, me and this random guy that you've never seen in your entire life, we want to speak to you. We want to speak to you. And I said, I already told you, I gave you my terms. And I just confirmed it with my psychiatrist, which you have the contact information for. So you don't have to take my word for it that me and her had this conversation. You can actually contact her. Just last week, I talked to my psychiatrist about this specific situation, and she said that the safest thing to do is to have a family therapist present. But then, as soon as the family therapist is here, and you guys can see his profile, you can check his credentials, as soon as it's here, you two turn into ghosts. As far as I've been able to put together, children, they can't run physically away from their problems. Their legs are too short. They can't fight physically their problems. They're not strong enough. So they develop ways to run away in their head. You two developed a way to run away in your head, which led to narcissism, and which led to you thinking that you're the most important person ever. That's why, Drew, that's why your wife repeatedly was saying that she's going to get the COVID shot, because she doesn't want her family to get sick. And then I said, well, that's why I got the COVID shot. And then you said that you're not going to get a shot because you have a 0.5% chance of catching COVID or dying from COVID. But neither me nor your wife were talking about you. She's worried about somebody else. I'm worried about somebody else. You're worried about Drew Allen Motley. You can't think of anybody besides yourself. You're the most important person ever. So that's the survival technique. The child can't run away, can't fight. So they start to think, I don't care what I have to do. I don't care how many people I have to hurt. I'm the most important person. Everybody is the most important person. They are. Because once your life ends, it's over. There's nothing else that you can do. Once you die, it's done. You don't get a chance to undo your mistakes. You don't get a chance to say sorry. So you guys have justified doing a lot of bad things to a lot of people. You both have. That's why I continue to talk to you both. You both have done a lot of bad things. You've hurt a lot of people, and now you have well over 600 pages of medical records proving that you've done so. Proven beyond any reasonable doubt. And you don't have a speck of evidence that any of it is somehow not true. That any of it is somehow, it's a lie. You couldn't possibly have done that. You refuse to go to the doctors and get any proof, any evidence, because you're afraid of what you might find. But that defense mechanism isn't you. Drew Allen Motley is a human being. Sandra Karen last name is a human being. Just like me, we're all the most important person. And the problem is that I haven't done the kind of shit that you guys have done. So you know that since we're all human beings here, you know that you don't have to be this way, that you don't have to do these things. You didn't do this. The little gremlin in your head called clinical level narcissism popped up and forced you to do this. That's why you don't like these aspects about yourself. That's why you're avoiding me right now. It's because I'm talking about things that you don't like about yourself. So you'll convince people that you never did it, that you're misremembering it. And I'll take other people who was in the room whenever it happened, whenever you said these things, whenever you done these things, and then you guys will try to change the subject because you don't want to shine a light on your own flaws. But the problem is that you've got the proof of the actual damage you're doing to other people. Now I know you don't give a shit. You can't give a shit. The doctors say that those who are suffering from clinical level narcissist are what they call it, oh, what the hell is the term for it? Empathy impaired, that's the term. Empathy impaired. Y'all both do not have the ability to feel empathy at the same level as everybody else. That's why instead of saying, hey, sorry, and actually being sorry, that means like going and getting the therapy and everything required to not do the same thing again. Instead of being sorry, and actually trying to change, you guys make up excuses about why you did these things. Mama likes to change her story every time. Oh, I did that thing because that's something that Grandma did. Well, I did it because you deserved it. Well, I actually did it because it was somebody else's fault. And stuff like, and she changed her story every time. Listen, I was a military police, but military police don't have to do interrogations most of the time. It's whenever it comes to law enforcement, if I would have performed some interrogations, then I would have known that you all were blowing smoke up my ass for quite some time, But I'm just getting these skills now. And since we actually have the evidence of what happened, we have the emails you sent whenever you were changing your story with each and every email, that kind of thing. So we know, as a matter of fact, that you're doing this, and you know that you're doing it. And you don't know why you're doing it. Because that little gremlin that gets in your head, it takes control, and then suddenly you don't like the way that you're acting. You don't like the person that you're being. And you attack people who mention that because you don't like it whenever you do that. You don't want to be that person. And instead you insist that other people pretend that you're better than who you are, than what you're actually doing. You try to gaslight people into thinking that it never happened. Well, you never said it like that. And then somebody brings out the evidence, and suddenly you're throwing out red herrings. You're doing all this because it feels like you're under attack, but it's not you who's under attack. It's the damn gremlin in your head. It's not you who's doing this. It's the sickness. It's this illness. It's called a maladaptation. There was an adaptation that took place, just like, hey, a bird wants to fly, it evolves and adapts so that it has wings, then suddenly it flies so that it can get worms and stuff like that, and it can see the worms from above, because if it didn't, it'd starve to death. So you adapted, and when you adapted, you maladapted. Not everything that's an adaptation is for the best. So Cynthia, and occasionally the truth comes back, and then she does something crazy. Sorry about that. Hey, Dad. Happy Father's Day. and she does something crazy. And so that's her thing. She requires therapy to undo that. It's a maladaptation. Now, what I said right then and there, sorry about that. I didn't believe my own timestamp here, trying to skip things. But what I said there was that while my mother and my father have this clinical level narcissism, which apparently was a defense mechanism, according to Sigmund Freud, from their childhood. While that was their defense mechanism, my oldest aunt, she has a different defense mechanism. She pretends that these things happen to somebody else, and then after ignoring the problem for weeks, months, years, every now and again it builds up and it overwhelms her emotions, and she ends up doing something that she doesn't want to do. She ends up losing her temper or something like that. So it's a different adaptation. I'm trying to show them both that while their adaptation is common, not 100% of the people that have gone through the exact same situations as them, not 100% of those people are have the exact same illness, but these things are very well studied. I used to blame myself for everything, even whenever it couldn't have possibly been my fault. And that's what I worked out in therapy. I said, okay, well, this is what you're saying. This is why you're beating yourself up. Let's look at other people who have done these exact same things. Do you think they should be treated that way? Do you think they should be treating themselves like that? I said, well, no. I said, well, why are you treating yourself like that? They go through the evidence. What is the evidence? Let's look at others. Let's compare the situations. Let's dig into this and get rid of it. If it's not helping you, get rid of it. It's just an anchor weighing you down. Ain't nobody going into a hospital and coming out not happier and healthier and wealthier because they did so. So I don't know what you're scared of, and I'd like to know what you're scared of. I'd like you to tell the truth. I'd like you to ask yourself, because then we can work together and work through your fears, right? So we can say, I'm scared that this has happened. I'm scared that I'm the only one that's going to go into the hospital, and I'm going to come out and I'm going to be worse off than before. And I say, well, are you an alien? Let's work through it in our heads, Are you an alien? No. You got any evidence that you're an alien? No. You got any evidence that you're different than everybody else that goes in the hospital? No. Well, then that fear is unfounded, and that's the first step. Knowing that you're supposed to go into a buffet and eat from the salad bar, knowing that in your heart, it ain't going to help you do it. But it is the first step. Remember them two, my 600-pound life or whatever, them two sisters? Remember the interview that they did with them? And one of the sisters said, whenever my mom always said that when you eat a sugar, drink a Diet Coke, and that cancels it out. And the doctor was flabbergasted, but had to explain to them that they're wrong. So the first step is to know, objectively speaking, that you're incorrect, to look at the actual evidence, not your feelings, not your emotions, not the way you feel about a situation. Look at the actual evidence from the people who decide what is and isn't evidence, and work through it. Is this a real thing? So as far as I'm able to put together, apparently, since kids can't fight and kids can't run, they figure out how to run in their head. That's an adaptation. But whenever it starts to, affect their lives negatively, affect the people around them negatively, that they love and care about the most, that's whenever it becomes a maladaptation. You all know that you can be happier,
You know, there's people out there that are smiling ear to ear, day after day. Y'all know that you can be healthier. Point to plenty of people who are just the pinnacle of health, the Jack LaLanne's out there. Y'all know that you can be wealthier. You can look at all the different Elon Musk and Bill Gateses and stuff like that out there. Y'all know that you can be wealthier. Y'all know that this can help in your life, and you ain't got any evidence that it won't. That was Mama's last thing with her last email. Oh, well, it didn't make you happier or healthier. Oh, so you're saying that my therapy doesn't work. Well, here's the contact information for the powers that be. You better call them. Tell them, hey, you know, the depression thing ain't working for my son. He's obviously not gotten any better whatsoever. All the reports and all the medical records are wrong. But Mama didn't do that. She didn't call them. She didn't make that argument because she knew that she was full of shit. She knew that what she was saying was wrong. So, that is the way it is. You know, it just, she's thinking of the soonest lie, the nearest lie, the quickest lie to get out of the situation. So whenever she came by, you know, the farmhouse the other day so that she could bother other people in person, you know, she didn't want to go to a public place. She didn't want to go to a public park. She didn't want to go to her house. No, she wants to bother other people with this whole thing. And she sure as hell doesn't want to talk to no family therapist. My goodness. She would actually have the possibility of being wrong. Instead, she recruited this random guy that I'd never seen before in my entire life to come talk to me. And after all those emails saying, oh, I've changed, me and Drew, we've changed, this is no longer an issue. No, I refuse to have to get any evidence whatsoever that I have changed. After all that talk about her changing, what did she do? Well, way back in 2013, she got her husband, and she went to the farmhouse, and she just started screaming at me and Brittany, and my oldest little brother was there, Nathaniel, because that's her way of doing things. Gang up on you, find somebody that agrees with her and has no chance of disagreeing with her, and then gang up on you in person. That's the way to do it. That way I can pound it in your head as if it's going to change what my medical records say. Of course it ain't going to change what my medical record says. It's not about that. It's about her continuing to hurt me. Because she wants to hurt me. And you want to hurt me. But you have to admit to yourself that that's what you want to do. And then you have to look at the actual medical evidence from the people that put me back together and see that you successfully hurt me. Congratulations. You nearly killed me. And then you have to believe it. You have to prove them wrong if you think they're wrong. You have to actually engage with these things. As a kid, you can't. You don't have the intellectual capacity. You don't have the capacity to fight. You don't have the capacity to run, so you run away in your head. But as an adult, we all have to face our problems. The only problem is there's no training to get in between kid and adult. Apparently there used to be. Jewish people still do it. They have a bar mitzvah, a bat mitzvah, and after that, everybody treats them differently. So they have like quite a few years of practicing being an adult and everybody teaching them how to be an adult. And now we're just full of conspiracy theories about how well they're doing. Oh my goodness, they're doing so much better than everybody else. Well, I wonder why. So, they have practiced being an adult. You guys are still acting like kids. You still haven't changed. So in 2013, Mama gets her husband and she yells at me for 5 hours. She's yelling at me, she's yelling at Brittany. That's her way of doing things. Later on, they've got the house in Somerville. Mama wants Grandma to give her the house for free. So she gets her sister, and then we'll go over to the house. And her sister's got her dog. And so her sister's dog starts chewing on Grandma's leg because Mama's screaming at her and her sister's screaming at her. All so that Mama can get $30,000 from this old lady worth of assets so she can get this house for free. And she starts yelling at her and everything, and the dog's chewing on poor old Grandma, God rest her soul's leg. She's doing this to her own mother because that's the way that she does things. And then what happens? Not too long ago, third time's the charm, she comes up with this random guy that I've never seen before in all of my life. And she asks, oh, can we talk at a family function at the farm? So that she can gang up on me and yell at me for 5 hours and make it everybody else's problem. After all of those emails saying how much she's changed. Oh, I've just changed. I changed. Oh, you want me to prove that I changed? And then she runs away. You both run away. You've been running since you was kids in your head. Now you're running in real life now. And Drew's gotten real good at running and hiding. The problem is all of us adults, we actually have to face our problems. Can't lie about it. Can't change the story every time you lie about it. It's time to prove it. If you think the doctors are wrong, I've given you hundreds of ways to prove it for free. With me getting together and going through all of the trouble to get a family therapist and everything together for you, for free, from a distance, so you just have to hop on a phone call, you don't have to drive nowhere, you don't have to do anything special. Look around. Ask your friends. Did their kids do that for you? Did their kids get together a medical professional to help them get happier, healthier, and wealthier? Did their kids do that for them? I knew. More evidence, more actual and tangible evidence that you cannot deny, that other people can look at. It's something that they can look at and they can say, well, shit, my kid never did that for me. And then you know, as a matter of fact, that since no, their kid didn't do it for them, that this is something that I did that's extraordinary, that's above and beyond, that this is the right thing to do. So that's a fucking hell of a Father's Day gift. Now's the part where I say, you're welcome. But let's be honest. You're going to keep running. You're going to keep hiding. Because that's what you do. And you're both going to do that. You're going to keep running. Going to keep hiding. Oh my goodness. A family therapist. It's like that damn movie, Blast from the Past, with that guy from The Mummy, Brendan Fraser. Oh my God, I gotta run away. There's a medical professional. Oh my God, I might actually be wrong about something. Oh God, help. Nothing bad's gonna happen to you, man. I'm here with you. I'm offering my unconditional love and support. I'm not giving up on you. But it's up to you to take this step, because I can't help you. The family therapist can, and he's sitting here waiting for you. Waiting for you to start being an adult. Quit running and hiding. He's going to help you, make you happier, healthier, and wealthier. He's been studying this for a very long time. And he's helped a great many people doing exactly that. And you have no evidence that you're any different than all these people. You can get help too. And all of that for free, without ever even having to drive somewhere. Just do it right over the phone. My goodness. I'm a hell of a kid. I'm doing a real good thing for y'all. And my medical professionals agree, and you can call them. You have their contact information if you don't think that they agree. The scientists agree. The academics agree. The lawmakers agree. I'm really doing a nice thing for y'all. So I'm sorry I didn't get you anything yesterday on Father's Day. I tried typing this out and I just couldn't. So here I am trying to save you time again. Every time I make one of these and I listen to it and make sure that I didn't say nothing really bad or something like that, every time I do something like that, there's a little option towards the bottom that says ×2 speed, and I push that so I can get through it that much faster. So you can't say I don't have time to read this big long email, and you can't say I don't have time to listen to your voicemails. Now you ain't got no excuse no more. Because what I'm doing is doing the best I can to bend over backwards for you two. I'm a pretty fucking good kid. Anyway, happy Father's Day. I got you the best present a man could. I could turn your whole life around. Well, at least I got the person that can, and he's just waiting for you to return my calls, and return my emails, schedule a time, and we can do this together. You don't have to do it alone. Not like I had to. After my divorce, going to all those therapy sessions all by myself, just to get called on my 34th birthday by my dad to have him tell me that I'm not doing enough in my life. I said, I didn't say that you're not doing enough. I just said that you need to be shadowing your medical professionals and everything on top of going to school, on top of building a cabin, on top of. You didn't say I'm not doing enough. You just said, well, I'm not. But there's extra things that you should be doing on top of everything else that you're doing. It ain't what Druid Allen Motley did. It ain't what Druid Allen Motley was not what Drew Allen Motley thinks that he should have done. Oh, but that's the standards he has for his kid. It's impossible standards, and he knows it. He even admitted it on my 34th birthday. He said that he wanted me to wake up every day and ask what I can do to make the world a better place. And I offered to strap a camera to my head so that he can see 100% of my day, and he knows that I wake up and do that. I tried to get him to acknowledge the facts. I'm a veteran of 2 different branches of the military. I've gotten 2 different degrees, and I did it with a lot less resources than he did, and I did it faster than he did. I tried to get him to acknowledge the facts, but he didn't want to look at the facts because it disagreed with this fairy tale he'd made up in his head about his son. And I asked, what can I do to prove to you? And he said he was never going to believe that I'm doing this. And because of that, he's always going to treat me like this. He's always going to treat me worse than he treats anybody else in his life. He said he treats everybody the same. I gave him the facts about how he treats other people. The undeniable facts. We verified together that no, he does not. And still, he's sitting there like a stick in the mud. The offer to talk to the family therapist, yeah, I set it up with me and my mom. But I can set it up with me and you. And we can be on the road to recovery together, instead of having to do it alone like I did. And it's going to be a hell of a lot easier doing it together than doing it by yourself. That's why I emailed both of you, so that you have other people to make this journey easier for you. Make you happier, make you healthier, make you wealthier. and you ain't got no evidence whatsoever that it won't. Happy Father's Day, Dad. I love you both. Unconditionally.
So, with that out of the way, you might say, hey, your delivery is off. You're kind of being sarcastic and everything. Now, do you have a kid? If you have a kid, has the kid ever said something sarcastic to you? Has the kid ever talked back to you? Has the kid ever said something to you that you didn't appreciate or something like that? Okay, now that you've answered that question, has that justified killing them? Yes or no? Very simple question. Would anybody else agree that that justifies killing them? I'm not talking about anybody else as your pen pals in prison. I'm talking about the scientists, the academics, the medical professionals, the lawmakers out there, the people who hold all the power, the people who make the rules that are here in society that we all abide by, whether we want to or not. Does that justify the death of your kid? Let's take this by any other way. It's hard to understand mental illness because we can't see it. And it's not super common for people to accept the result of SPECT scans either. So we don't even really see them like broken bones. It's hard to accept that. What my parents are doing is essentially they've been told by medical professionals. They have over 600 pages of my medical records from 3 separate organizations, all in agreement on one fact, that they are killing their child. And that they're not only killing their child, they're killing every human being that they come across with their behavior. They're hurting everybody equally, and because their child has had more exposure to them, it hurt him more than it hurt anybody else. But anybody with that much exposure to them, to their vitriol, to their toxic actions and everything, is going to end up the exact same way. So if they don't want that to happen, then they can, there's a many things that they can do, but essentially just got to treat other people the way you'd like to be treated. That's it. They've said that, oh, they already do, and then I went through the facts with them and said that, and we looked at the facts. Do they? No, they don't. We're all in agreement. We're all looking at the exact same facts. No, they do not. It's the only thing I ever asked of them, and it's the only thing they got to do. And there are many ways for them themselves. I've offered many ways for them themselves to go and learn how to treat other people the way they'd like to be treated. I've given them many ways to do that on their own, but it's hard to do things on your own. I should know, because that's what I had to do whenever it came to my therapy, and it's one of the reasons why it took like well over a year of daily therapy, 5 days a week, to really pound these things into my head. If it was if I was going through it together with them, if I was part of some sort of group, then it would have been a hell of a lot easier. And that's what I'm trying to offer to them. I'm trying to make things easier should they want to take that path. Now again, this all happened in 2017. It is 2024 as of the date of me recording this. So this has been going on for, at a bare minimum, after all of my daily therapy, at a bare minimum, they've had 6 years to do anything whatsoever. Start a text-based chain with free therapists. They'll text me, they won't text the therapist. Therapist is just a human being with a different degree. My father's got a bachelor's degree. So if he went into school for 2 more years, he'd have a master's degree. A therapist is usually just a person with a master's degree in psychology. That's all it is. But they've been refusing to do this for 6 straight years. So if you think that I've been radio silent with them for 6 straight years and this is the first thing that they've heard out of me, then obviously you didn't watch my last video about this particular thing. It doesn't matter what tone that I do, what tone I deliver this news to them. It doesn't matter whether I do it in one way or another, and that's part of the reason. That's why I read that email for the first thing. So my father felt like he couldn't do anything right. He would do one thing, he'd get yelled at. He'd do another thing, he'd get yelled at. And it didn't matter what he did, he'd get yelled at. He was criticized no matter what he did, so he ran away. He ran away from his baby mama and her baby, and never paid child support his whole life. So that was that. He ran away, and that's against the law. And everybody's in agreement that that's against the law. Academics, scientists, lawmakers, medical professionals, that was the wrong thing to do. He was a criminal for 18 years, and the only reason he got away with it is because my mom didn't nail him on it. So my mama had to raise me without that child support. So how much does that cost? According to Google, child support in the state of Illinois for 18 years is worth about $250,000. So imagine not only having a kid, which is hard enough to deal with, but also on top of having a kid, you now have negative $250,000. That's the way my mama had to raise me. Now, would that affect you? Yes. You don't have to answer that question. I can actually, the science is here. I can actually absolutely prove those who are poorer, in debt, whatever, got higher chance of mental illness, higher chance of being a victim of a crime, bloody. We've got all the science is settled. If you don't think that it's settled, it's up to you to prove it wrong. Burden of proof is on you. They've done their due diligence. It's your turn. So we know, as an absolute matter of fact, that this hurt my mama for the rest of her life from that day forward, and it hurt me as an extension, because she's my parent, for the rest of my life from that day forward. So we know that as an absolute matter of fact. You can cry, you can scream, you can do whatever you want, but we know that. We know that if you begin your life $250,000 in debt, that's going to hurt. You're going to have to essentially make all that money, or something that's worth all that money, that value, before you can hit zero. You got to dig your way out of the hole before you start walking forward at all. Before you take a first step forward. We know as an absolute matter of fact, and it's rough. Now, so it doesn't matter which way that I deliver this news. Now, part of my mistake here is attempting to show them that they're not special. Because a clinical level narcissist, they want to believe that they're some kind of an alien. Like I said, and that's the way we began this whole video. They want to believe that they're an alien in their heart. They want to believe that either they're the only human and everybody else is an alien. They're the main character, everybody else is a non-player character. They want to believe that that they are wholesale different, that somehow or another they are completely unique to everyone. They are Harry Potter. They are the chosen one, the only one that can stop Voldemort. But even in those stories, apparently, you look up enough theory crafting, there was two. It was him and Neville, whatever. So they want to believe that they are wholesale unique and different. And so explaining to them that they're just another human being, that's another insult. But again, there's nothing that I could do which is the correct thing to do. There's nothing I can do that is right, is the right thing to do. So it doesn't matter what I do, I'm going to get a negative vitriolic response no matter what. That's exactly what caused my father to run away from his family, responsibilities, etc. But, I'm doing as best as I can. So a lot of this is sort of psychology 101. I've taken a couple of psychology classes, and all I can do is repeat what my teachers told to me. I learned about the whole thing with people used to have a ritual in between being a child and being an adult. I learned about that from serial entrepreneur Eben Pagan. I learned from one of his programs. I think it was one of them that was overseen by Dr. Wyatt Woodsmall. So all I can do is repeat what these people said. What I've learned in therapy, what I've learned from my doctors and everything, I can just quote them and repeat what they've said. And all I can really do is share knowledge. Every time I read a book on narcissism, because I don't know what to do. Every time I read a book on narcissism or something like that, all I can do is share that information. If I had, for example, if I had celiac disease, if I had that disease, and someone came up to me and said, "Hey, I just read a book about celiac disease. I read it because I cared about you and I want to understand more about your disease. And I read that you don't have to, make bread out of wheat flour or something like that. We can make it out of acorns flour or something like that. Apparently you got to soak it overnight, get some of the bitter tannins out, boil it for a little while. It's kind of a mess, but you can still have bread. That'd be useful information for me." They're not saying I'm King Celiac and I know everything about celiac. They're saying I read this book. They're showing me the book and everything. So that's what I'm trying to do for my parents. I'm saying, like, hey, you've got this preliminary diagnosis from my my therapist, so this is what I've learned about it. According to this, it's it's saying that this is just a defense mechanism that was identified by Sigmund Freud. I think there's a book, How to Kill a Narcissist. It's the name of a book, How to Kill a Narcissist. I read that. Inside it says that everybody's a little bit more narcissist, but whenever they start hurting others and you've got actual medical evidence that you're hurting others and you ignore it anyways, that's whenever you've got something that's definitive and it's hurting other people, right? That much is absolutely proven and written in stone, and it's up to them whether they accept that information or not. Metaphorically, my parents are being told by doctors that I'm allergic to peanut butter, and 6 years later, they've spent 6 years of their lives trying to force me to eat peanut butter anyways, even when they've been told and they have the proof that I'm deathly allergic to peanut butter. And they're refusing to talk to the doctors at all or get any amount of evidence that my doctors are wrong. They're still trying to inflict damage upon me. They're actively trying to hurt me. That much is written in stone. It's not something that you can argue with. You can't say that they have positive intentions or something like that, because they literally do not. They do. You can talk to my medical professionals, prove it and everything. They literally do not have positive intentions. They want to hurt me. They are trying to hurt me. They have successfully hurt me in the past and nearly killed me. And now they're angry at me because of what my doctor said about what they're doing. And they're taking it out on me. And they've been doing it for 6 straight years. So like I said, all I can do is just share the information that I've had, show them the books. There was another book called Surviving, I think it was called Surviving Narcissistic Abuse. It was from some sort of doctor or another. You know, Brad Blanton, he had his Radical Honesty series. He talks a little bit about narcissism within some of the books that he's authored. He's a psychologist himself. I can, look up who in the hell was my child psychology teacher in Southern Illinois University, Edwardsville. My professor, he was a psychologist himself, PhD. He quit clinical psychology so that he could teach classes. I believe that's what his resume is. I might have brought it up to him at some point in time, so I can quote these people, but that's all I can do. I can just quote these people, repeat these people, and give them the sources themselves so that they don't have to take my word for it. They can go ahead and here's the people that I've gotten the information from, here's the books that I've read, here's what they said. All I can do is share information. Like I said, if I had celiac, somebody said, hey, I read a book on celiacs, they said it's something involving inflammation, so perhaps if you're feeling bad, you can take an anti-inflammatory. I don't know if that's going to work or not, but that's what it said in this book. I would appreciate that, but to them, it doesn't matter what I do. I'm always going to be wrong, regardless of any amount of evidence whatsoever. So we'll get into the rest of it here. What happened this morning at 1:40 in the morning. So this is the message just got from my oldest aunt. I want to say, I keep saying my oldest aunt and everything, but it's hard to track down who's your brother, who's your sister. If you haven't actually looked on Facebook and said, like, this person is my brother, this person is my relative, then it's kind of hard to look that kind of stuff up. So all I can do is not make it easy. Like I said, there's nothing good can come of harassing these people. So you can whine and cry all you want and say that I'm trying to throw these people under the bus or whatever, but the point of this is to save lives. And the point is that it can save lives. So we're working from there, from the absolute facts of the situation. So, this is a message I just got. I forwarded them the messages that I got on Facebook once I got them. I said, hey, this is the message that I just got from my oldest aunt. I'm guessing this is my mother's doing, but hey, what's new? You two both want to hurt me, so you try and hurt me, then hang on to medical records that prove that you did hurt me successfully. I just wish that you'd share your plans with some medical professionals to see if they approve of your actions. I've got the family counselor nearby. The one question you got to ask yourself is, why are you trying to hurt your son, who has someone around who can successfully help you? And they got no evidence that that's not true. I can't help you. That's obvious after 36 years. You don't want my help. That's obvious after 36 years. But why are you still trying to hurt your son? If you don't believe you hurt your son, then why aren't you arguing with my medical professionals, who you have the contact information for? Why not go and prove that you're not hurting me? That would end all arguments. You nearly killed me. You have the records proving that. So why do you want to hurt me more? I love you both unconditionally. I don't know what's wrong with you, but I know someone who can help you. All you got to do is show up. I'll be there as you heal. You weren't there for me whenever I was in therapy, but I'll be there for you, and it'll be easier because of it. And P.S. postscript, this whole narrative that grandma, the woman who went to therapy and talked to medical professionals, was crazy is old. I'm tired of hearing about it. Grab her medical records and prove it. They're right there at the farm. Prove her medical professionals didn't know what they're doing. For God's sake, I keep giving you piles and piles of evidence and you give me none in return. It's exhausting, and of course it ain't how you'd like to be treated. So I should have sent them screenshots of the message I got at 1:40 in the morning. So let's look at the messages that I got at 1:40 this morning. Alrighty, here we go. Lots of memes in this folder. Sorry about that. So last time I talked to her was March 20th. I wanted to have that on the screenshot so that you can know that as a matter of fact. You don't have to take my word for it. That's 1:20 in the morning. She said, "You need to stop talking about me. You don't know what's going about, what you're talking about. My life is none of your business. You're a judgmental jerk. I've worked on my life all of my life, and you need to keep my name out of your mouth because you don't have a freaking clue. And you need to not buy into every narrative that my mother made up because she lived in a fantasy life with very little reflection of reality. Leave me alone, please. For fuck's sake, leave me alone." She got hit by the autocorrect. I said, "Hey, I have no idea what you're talking about, but if you're trying to get the whole world to never mention your name, then you're going to have a hell of a time. The last time I sent you a message was on March 20th. Facebook says so if you scroll up. I'd consider that leaving you alone, ma'am. But if you'd like to discuss this with a family counselor present, that can be arranged. This particular link seems to redirect now, so perhaps my counselor assigned to me is no longer available, but at least you'll get a solid yes or no if I'm being a judgmental jerk, and he'll help me get a clue, I guess." So I give her the link to my therapist. As I said here in the comment, I said, whenever I click on that link nowadays, this just happened last night. It redirects to like the general directory. I had a one appointment with him without anybody else present, and I logged in and sat there for 15 minutes. He never showed up, and now whenever I click on his link, I clicked on his link yesterday, it's now redirecting to other things. So maybe my mama, my daddy, or my oldest aunt, maybe they called him, contacted him, scared him away, and he's got me blocked or something like that. Maybe he quit, maybe he got fired. I don't know what happened to the guy, but whenever I click the link to his specific profile, which is what I copied and pasted here, he now no longer shows up. So I don't know what's going on with that. But so whenever after I got those messages, just to make sure that she was getting the full context, I assumed that she did this because of something my mom did yesterday whenever I sent out that Father's Day message. So just so that she has the full context in case my mom's, editing documents, giving her the worst of it, stuff like that, I went ahead and I forwarded the entire message complete with the message that you just listened to, that 40-minute message for Father's Day. I forwarded that to her so she could have the entire context, just in case she's only getting part of the story, So I said, just in case you're only getting part of the story, then instantly believing it from my mom, here's the entire context. Sorry for sending you 3 whole messages since March. I will try to leave you alone. She told me to leave her alone, so I'm going to try to leave you alone. There you go. And try to adhere to her wishes. Then not too long later, she sends me another message. I told you before that I'd be completely fine with talking to you with a counselor, but I'm referring to the message that you sent to my mama and my daddy that has just been shared with me just for the sake of mental torture. So again, she's made up a fairy tale inside of her mind. Now, I don't know. I haven't talked to my medical professionals about my oldest aunt. So I don't know if she's suffering from the same condition that my parents are likely suffering from, according to my medical professionals. But this is narcissistic behavior. Now, like I said earlier, I think it was that book, How to Kill a Narcissist. I think within that book, the author says everybody's a little bit narcissist. You kind of have to be whenever you're in Texas and you got your stand your ground law or something like that. Somebody boots in the door and then you just shoot them. You know, you're the most important person. But it's when you start to hurt other people with your narcissism, and then you get your medical records and everything, that's whenever it becomes a real big issue. So this is narcissistic behavior. I don't know if it's clinical narcissistic behavior, but it's certainly looking that way. It's just a preliminary diagnosis. It's my assumption. You know, like I said, my medical professionals could say yay or nay, but I've also given her the contact information for the family therapist, and they can point in that direction as well. So she has a way to verify or reject this. She has a way to prove it one way or the other, and because of that, you know, she doesn't have to take my word for it. She doesn't have to think that I'm just, you know, doing this for negative purposes. So she's already made up a story inside of her head that I'm doing this to hurt other people, to hurt her specifically, and she's running with that. It doesn't make any sense. Why would a veteran of 2 military branches with 2 degrees suddenly turn around and start hurting her just to hurt her? Doesn't make any sense, but it's the first thing that popped into her head, and she ran with it. She got herself all pissed off, and then she took the time to pump out a message and send it off to me at damn near 2 o'clock in the morning, that's wild, right? So she says, just for the sake of mental torture, you bring up my name several times, and then you state that I like to pretend the past didn't happen, and when I do acknowledge it, I do something crazy. That is her maladaptation. Now, there have been several times in the past that she's done precisely that. She's attacked someone with a deadly weapon. She's attacked herself with a deadly weapon. There's been several different instances which are absolute facts that can be verified by all different parties that this is precisely what she does. She bottles it up, and then eventually it blows over, just like it does for everybody. But whenever it happens for her, some wild shit occurs, and there's usually years and years and years of consequences. So obviously it's exponentially worse. So she says, fuck off and keep my name out of your goddamn mouth. My life is not your business. I've been working on my life for all my life, and I will not stand for judgmental belittling of me. You need to understand that my mom was evil and crazy. You don't need to believe or repeat anything that you've heard from that lunatic hag. That day that you referred to once before when you said that that my mom and her was over at the house where my middle little brother is currently living, and she was yelling at, you know, that we were yelling at grandma and everything. On that day, the person yelling and causing problems was my lunatic mother, not your mama. She would pull her shit with us and then ask to everybody else. She'd tell everybody else an entirely different story. Did she also say that my dog bit her? That didn't happen. My dog got in front of your mama to protect her from grandma and her crazy ranting. And then grandma just made up all the rest. She's the one who lived her life hurting people. She happily traded her life. This is what is underneath this little censorship here. She happily traded her life, the lives of other people, for a more convenient life on her own, for a better life than the one that she had. Everyone is just trying to live a tolerable life with the cards that they were dealt. You're a jackass. This is not fun. None of this is fun. Living life isn't fun. That's something that can be certainly argued by some mental health professionals. I'd say that the vast majority of mental health professionals would agree that if you don't think that life is, if you're not having fun in life, then something's wrong. You need some help. Haven't you heard from everyone that everyone is in their own journey and fighting their own battles? So try to be kind. That's all anyone wants is a little kindness and the courage to make it through another day without putting a bullet in their head. You are trying to drive your mother to suicide, and you've come close to succeeding. If my middle little brother hadn't had 2 kids, I don't know if she would still even be here. I'm done. I'm tired. I've dealt with this shit my whole life, and I'm not rehashing it anymore to be included in your games. Leave me out of it. Don't psychoanalyze me from the far end of a telescope. You're not qualified, and I don't have the patience. Leave my name out of your mouth and leave me alone. So, a few things here. Let me see. You need to understand that my mom was evil and crazy. You don't believe anything you learned from that lunatic hag. This isn't the kind of shit that came up that she said during my grandma's funeral, God rest her soul. This is certainly the idea that she has about her mama in her head right here and right now. Personally, I don't believe that she actually believes this. This is hurtful words that are aimed at other people. This is speaking ill of the dead for the sake of argument. She's just come up. This is another red herring. It's something for me to chase after in the argument so that this can become an argument back and forth about what we think of my grandmother, So I don't think that she truly believes this. I think she's just being hurtful to somebody who can't defend herself. But, the incident she's talking about here, on that day, that's not what happened. Here's what happened according to my grandmother. My mom and her oldest sister invited her to the house that my middle little brother is currently living in. But he wasn't living in it then. That's what occurred, according to my grandmother. God rest her soul. Now, they invited her over there, and then they began berating her. Now, since that's what my mama did with me in 2013, I'm inclined to believe her. Grandma, at the time, had been receiving abuse counseling from Safe Connections in St. Louis, Missouri. So she managed to withstand the onslaught and not agree to give one or both of her daughters a $30,000 asset, free, no strings attached. That's what happened according to her. So she was able to withstand the onslaught only because she was already in therapy at the time and had been in therapy for a little while now. Their version, my oldest aunt is giving a different version of the story. She's saying that my grandma, who was already having trouble moving around and getting places on her own, my grandma got to that house and then just went off on the handle for no reason. What is the more likely story? Grandma just starts to blow off on the handle for no reason at all. She arrives in the house, immediately takes charge. And if that's the case, why did she do that? Did she invite my mom and her oldest sister over to that house? Why would she do that? Why not just wait until her husband, my grandpa, left the house? He could be off at, he's had some gambling problems in the past. So he could have been off at the boat, at the Alton casino that's there. So he could have been off at the boat, and he could have just invited them over then. While he's gone, he gets to scream at her daughters. Maybe she just waits until he leaves and goes to Harbor Freight to pick up some tools. Maybe she waits until he goes to Farm and Home. Maybe she sends him out for some groceries, invites her daughters over, and yells at them then and there. Why would she invite them to this other place? And if they're the ones that invited her, which is her side of the story, if they're the ones that invited her, why would she come in guns a-blazing? Does this story make any sense at all? Does this counter story make any sense at all? Now, like I said, my mama, she's assaulted people various times. She's broken the law various times. She spent time in jail various times. And I know at least once. I don't know if she's been various times, but I know that she's at least been to jail once. But she's assaulted other human beings. She's assaulted her own sister. She's assaulted her own mother long before she died, and there's too many witnesses for her to deny that it never happened. So, she assaults other people. Now, every time that she goes to a family gathering, she always has someone present. Either someone who looks like they can handle themselves in a fight, or the dogs. And her sister does the exact same. And it's the exact same thing. Now, like I said, her oldest sister has assaulted people with a deadly weapon before. So they're both violent and a danger to other people. And that is written in stone. These are facts that you cannot deny. Because there's police records, there's medical records of injuries and the like. These are things that others have witnessed, and everybody was there to witness these events occurring. They are a definitive danger to other people's physical health and even a danger to their lives. But they're the ones that are going to each and every family event, either with dogs or with dragging along a person that they think can handle themselves into a fight. They're the ones acting like they're in danger, whenever the reality is literally, by the facts, the opposite way around. It's crazy. It's like, a dictator going and wiping out a town, and then suddenly he starts stepping up his guard and everything as if he's the one that's in danger now. No, he's clear. He is the danger. So it doesn't make any sense, right? So, let me see. Never happened. She's the one who lived her life hurting other people. She happily traded the lives of others for a more comfortable life for herself. My grandma, she was her father, my great grandfather on my mama's side, on my grandma's side, he was drafted into World War II. He was in the war in the East. Japanese, he was in the Navy, if I recall correctly. And then after the military, he was a violent drunk that did a lot of things to her family. That's a very common story. That book and series of 2 movies, Unbroken, following good old Zampini, God rest his soul. It was the same thing. Zampini was lucky. He managed to, after being a violent drunk and abusive to a great many people by his own admission within that book. He eventually came across a TV preacher, or I guess he might have been a radio preacher back then, and telling his story over and over again served as what I'm going to call impromptu repeated exposure therapy. Eventually he was able to, his past was lost power over him, and it wasn't able to drive him crazy anymore. So that was all luck. So my great grandfather, he worked that way. Now my grandma, so that was the day and ages that my grandma grew up in. My grandma grew up in a household where not all of her brothers and sisters made it to adulthood. So if my grandma raised her 5 children in a house where 100% of them survived, then that is a definitive, irrefutable evidence that she raised her kids better than the way that they were raised. Now, notably, both my mama and her oldest sister raised their children. My 3 little brothers, myself, my oldest aunt, and her 2 daughters. We were all raised in a household where we didn't have to work on the farm. They had to work on a farm as a kid. And it was back-breaking labor. Whenever I showed a picture of my mom's graduation picture from Southwestern High School, whenever I showed that picture to coworkers, whenever I was 17 years old, I showed it to coworkers at APAC Telemarketing, which at the time was at Alton Square Mall. Whenever I showed that picture, they didn't believe it was my mama because they thought she was a black woman. That's how tan that she was. Now, you think she fucking got that tan because she was just outside, just playing around and everything? She just had so many goddamn friends and everything? Where's the evidence in that? There is none. She got that tan from working out on the farm, and that's something that me and my cousins and all my brothers didn't have to do. So my mama and her oldest sister raised their children in a household that was better than the ones that they grew up in. That's a fucking hell of an accomplishment for a 19-year-old kid from my mama's side of the story. I'm not sure how old my oldest aunt was whenever she had her daughters, but it's a fucking hell of an accomplishment. There's been this definitive, unarguable results coming out of this. Grandma lived in a house where not all of her brothers and sisters survived to adulthood, but she raised her kids in a house where they did. My mama and her oldest sister raised their kids in a household where their kids didn't have to work on the farm. You know, I was able to concentrate on schooling and whatnot. I didn't have to do all that. So this is definitive, unarguable results. So to say that my grandma just sacrificed the lives of her children and such like that for a more convenient life to herself, incorrect. Literally, definitively, objectively, verifiably incorrect. But this is the, demonized story that my oldest aunt here has in her head about her mom. And it certainly isn't something that she voiced at her funeral, for certainly. Let me see. Everybody just wants a little kindness. Yeah, so I'm offering services with a family therapist and everything. I'm offering that. The Veterans Affairs is paying hundreds of dollars for that per hour for that family therapist. I had to fight for 4 years of my life in the military in order to get access to this Veterans Affairs benefits. And I'm using it on them instead of using it on my own family or something like that, which notably I don't have. So I don't have a wife anymore, and I've never had any kids, so it is what it is. But I fought for all that time, and the government's paying hundreds of dollars for these people to meet them. So it's very clear I'm being kind. I'm being very kind. Everyone involved is being very kind. But that's not the story that my oldest aunt has in her head right now. Then she drops the bombshell. You are trying to drive your mother to suicide, and you've come close to succeeding. If her grandkids hadn't come into her life, I don't think that she would that she would still be here. So now she's accusing me of nearly killing my mother. And by doing what? What am I doing to my mother that has nearly driven her to suicide? I have offered her the services of mental health professionals at the cost of years of my life, at the cost of hundreds of dollars from the United States government and military benefits. If someone is going to kill themselves, they get locked in an insane asylum like I was. They go to the mental health professionals. Now, my oldest aunt, she works in a hospital herself, but she selectively believes in healthcare depending on whether or not it's going to help out her current argument in the moment. She believes in healthcare all the way up until it disagrees with something that she already believes. And she refuses outright to prove it one way or the other, to actually prove whether or not that particular aspect of healthcare is right or wrong. She refuses to get any evidence whatsoever. Same thing with my parents. So you can see why they're all in a row. Now I'm probably gonna call this something like narcissistic abuse to a veteran, parents, and the flying monkeys. Am I saying that my oldest aunt can fly? No. Am I calling my oldest aunt a monkey? No. That's a term that I got from, I believe, a book called People Can't Drive You Crazy Until You Have the Keys. I believe I got that term from them, but it could have been something that was part of the franchise for Franklin Covey from the late, great Dr. Stephen Covey, 7 Habits of Highly Effective People. It might have been something I heard from them. But that's a term. They've got a terminology for these people. The people that refuse to look at any evidence whatsoever and instead just take something that a narcissist says and then just run with it and attack. It's from the Wizard of Oz, those flying monkeys. So I'm not insulting her, I'm using this term, here's where the term comes from, etc., etc. So then, don't psychoanalyze me from the far end of a telescope. You're not qualified and I don't have the patience. Now, that last little piece, that's why I'm citing all of my, studies here. This is where I got this information from, this book. Here is where you can verify that information. My parents are not the only ones with a copy of my medical record. My oldest aunt just so happens to also have a copy of my medical record. Now, I don't know whether or not she's looked through my medical record. According to the message on March 20th, she says that she's been perusing it when she has time. But at this point in time, she's accusing me of nearly murdering my mother by asking her to please treat other people the way she'd like to be treated, verifying that she's not doing that with my mother's help. We're both verifying that she's not doing that, looking at the absolute facts, and then offering ways that she can learn how to do this. All because, again, I nearly died because she wasn't doing that. Because she nearly killed me. So now, my oldest aunt is accusing me of nearly causing my mother's suicide whenever she literally has over 600 pages of evidence in her possession from 3 entirely different organizations full of medical professionals. As someone who works in a hospital, She's accusing me of the thing that my mother has, that she actually has the evidence that my mother has successfully done for me. And my mom didn't even nearly drive me to suicide. My mama nearly killed me with abuse. That much is verifiable, and it's something that my mom has access to, and that she has, according to her, she's looked through some of my medical records. Something that my dad has access to, and it's something that my oldest aunt has access to. Do you see how dangerous these people are? She's trying to say that I'm doing the wrong thing, even though this is precisely what my psychiatrist has signed off on. That following the advice of my medical professionals is actually murdering other people. And the evidence that she is offering is none whatsoever. While she actually has access to over 600 pages of evidence that the precise opposite thing is true. What would happen to you if someone told you you were killing your mom? What would happen to you? How would you feel? How do you think that I feel taking all this? This would have been a huge blow 6 years ago, before I was done with all my therapy. If someone said, "You're fucking murdering your mother," that would have been a huge blow. I would have tried everything under my power for them not to think that anymore. But at this point in time, I have over 600 pages of evidence that that's not true. I'm directly following the advice of my medical professionals. And she has over 600 pages that what she's saying is a lie. But why is she saying this? Because she wants to hurt me. She wants to hurt me. She's calling me names and everything. It's very fucking clear that she wants to hurt me. She just doesn't believe all the medical records that say that she, along with my mom, my dad, my ex-wife, has succeeded and nearly killed a man. Killed me. Moving on. Hey, once again, I've left you alone since March. You cannot control whether people talk about you or psychoanalyze you. All you need to do to prove that Grandma was the aggressor and not the dog is to dig up the medical records from that date. If there's dog wounds, it's the dog's fault. If there's not wounds, it's her fault. It's a yes or no, definitive, objective answer. If she was crazy, you both have a chance to prove it, her and my mother. She went to a lot of counseling. You work at a hospital. Prove her counselors and mental health professionals didn't know what they're doing. It's a simple task. Besides that, people are going to chat about you. Unless they bother you in person, that is leaving you alone. You fought for the First Amendment in the military. Did I mention that my oldest aunt is a veteran of the United States Air Force? I believe she was in the Air Force Reserves for a little while. She doesn't have quite the extensive experience that I have. But, you know, she was a veteran. You fought for the First Amendment in the military. You cannot just demand that people don't use the First Amendment just because you don't like what they're saying. You have the power to prove your argument one way or the other. Then people can either accept the evidence or don't. But if you think I'm mishandling the situation, the counselor is there. She has the contact information for my family counselor. He's got the yes and no of it. Until then, you cannot make people stop mentioning your name or what they think about you. Now, there are thousands of books that she could read about how to stop giving a shit what other people think about you. But instead, she's trying to control the whole world. And why? Because it's narcissistic behavior. Narcissistic behavior is thinking that the entire world should change, and you're the only one that has nothing to change. So she reacts, cry emoji, to my message. She says, talk to me about people who don't know me. Tossing my name around to stir up shit? I'm just trying to stir up shit. I'm just trying to stir up shit. Apparently my offering my family therapist to my father with my mother listening in because it was originally set up for her. Apparently that's just trying to stir up shit. Again, she has this villain in her head. She's made up this story in her head about me. And she's sticking to it, even when it doesn't make a damn bit of sense. She doesn't have a speck of evidence that is true. She's still going from the basic assumption that I'm doing this just to hurt her, whenever she wasn't even the subject of the conversation. I mentioned her name twice. Boom! She's in on it. She automatically assumes that I did that just to piss her off. Whenever at no point in time was she, even supposed to hear that conversation. So did I expect, what was my intent to convince my mother to send, my mother to send her that message just to piss her off? Is that the story that she makes up in her head? It doesn't make any sense. Now this is the type of thing that I went through in therapy. If I had a fucking crazy thing, if I said to my therapist that somebody pulled out in front of me just to piss me off, they would say, why would they do that? What did they know about you that made them think of an inu? They would work through the mindset with me. They'd go back and forth. They'd let me know about different perspectives. And we'd work through that thought process and realize it didn't make any fucking sense. But this is automatic. This is the first thing that she thinks of, and she's fucking running with it. This story in her head that doesn't make a damn bit of sense. So, okay. Tossing my name to stir up shit does not equal leaving me alone, and I am under no obligation to prove that old bat was crazy. She was crazy. She hated me, and she harmed me a lot in my lifetime, yet I was the one there trying to take care of her in the end. Even whenever I was working over 60 hours a week and losing my relationship because I didn't have time for my partner. Then she throws out another red herring. I don't think that she believes this, again, another thing where she's going to toss somebody else under the bus in the middle of the conversation to see whether or not I take the bait. To see whether or not I start arguing for the innocence of another person. So it can be all about that from then on out. Because that's something that's not based on facts. That's based on opinions. We get into an opinion war, nobody's right. I say I like ketchup. She says she hates ketchup. I start arguing about how great ketchup is. She starts arguing about how bad ketchup is. Eventually she calls me bad names. Come on in here. My middle aunt. She's yelling at the cat door. Don't know what she wants. Anyway, so my middle aunt's cat. Sorry. My middle aunt isn't here yelling through the cat door. I'm not watching my middle aunt's two cats. But, so, she throws my middle aunt under the bus. She says, besides my sister here, she helped, but then she moved away while Grandma was at her sickest and was slowly dying. The way that my grandma died is Grandpa asked her if she wants breakfast. She said yes. He said, what about McDonald's? She said yes. Then they arrived at McDonald's. Grandpa asked Grandma what she wants. She wasn't breathing. That's the way my grandma died. So, obviously, nobody knew that she was dying. She had been in progressively worse and worse shape for ages, weeks, months, years. Nobody knew that she was at her life's end. My great-grandma on my grandpa's side, my great-grandma, she was on her deathbed, and everybody was gathered around her for weeks. At the time, I had such low self-esteem that because they didn't invite me directly, say, like, we're going to see great-grandma, do you want to come along? I felt like they didn't want me there. These are the things that happen to you mentally whenever you're dealing with narcissists. Of course they wanted me there. I wanted to be there, but I felt like they didn't want me there. Now again, this is something that you can verify all on your own. Would dealing with a narcissist, would being raised by a narcissist lower your self-esteem? Yes, absolutely. Here's all the medical evidence, here's all the mental health evidence, here's the psychology, here's the psychiatry, etc., etc. This is something, you don't have to take my word for it. So whenever my great-grandma died, she was on her deathbed for quite a while, and everybody was gathered around for ages upon ages until she finally passed away. My grandma, it was just another day, man. It was another day. She said she wanted McDonald's. She got to McDonald's, and she didn't order because she was gone. Nobody knew that Grandma was on her last legs, but she's saying that her sister moved away while Grandma was at her sickest and dying. Here's the worst part. This is objectively not true. My middle aunt did not move away until after the funeral. This is objectively incorrect. I know, because I went to Medora firehouse where Grandma was sitting, well, where she was laying, because she was already gone. She was laying in the back of an ambulance. She was laying in the back of an ambulance surrounded by her children. And I didn't think there was anything I could do. But I knew that my aunt still needed help moving. So after I stayed there for a while trying to put myself back together after the shock, I drove away and I went to my middle aunt's house, and I asked her husband, who was still there gathering his stuff, if he needed any help. He said, no, go be with your family. And I didn't think being with my family was going to help. So I went home. And she knows this is exactly what happened, because shortly afterwards she showed up here where I'm currently staying to tell me to be nice to my mom. Wasn't a single indication that I was going to be mean to my mom. Later she accused me of being mean to my mom because I wouldn't, pretend like my mom didn't try to kill me. I didn't pretend that she didn't do nothing wrong. It's very simple. I want to live. I want to continue to live and exist and everything. That's all I want to do. So I want her to not try and kill me. Very simple thing. But now she's accusing her own sister of something that she knows is not true. Did not happen that way. But she's doing it anyway. It's a red herring to see if I'm going to take the bait, if I'm going to steer the conversation in that direction. It's complete bullshit. She's doing it anyways. That's what this is narcissistic behavior. It doesn't matter if she's a narcissist or not. This is very narcissistic behavior. It's mean. It's evil. It's and she doesn't like doing it. Now, earlier in the thing here, so I'm under no obligation to prove that my mom was crazy. She was. So this is the thing. Did I ever say that she was under the obligation to do this? This is the sort of thing, right? This is a sort of a male-female conversation thing. That book, Men Are From Mars and Women Are From Venus. That author would probably come in and say, this is one of these. He would say that you said that that dress doesn't look good on your wife, and then your wife said, "Are you calling me fat?" He said, "Did I even say that whatsoever?" And then that starts an argument. But that's not what's happening here. What's happening here is that she's been challenged to get any amount of evidence, and she's refusing to get any evidence. She's saying, believe me. She's saying that what my father did on my 34th birthday You think you're right about this, but you're wrong, you're wrong, you're wrong, screaming at me. This is her version of doing that. She's refusing to get any evidence whatsoever. Instead, she's saying, don't listen to a word that old lady was saying. Because Grandma was seeing a counselor the day that my mom and her did this to her, there are medical records about this day. The counselor can say whether or not this is the truth or she was exaggerating this. Because people who are exaggerating this and making a big deal out of nothing, they act one way. But actual victims who are just being dramatic, actual victims who actually have had damage done to them, they act a different way. If she's saying this to her therapist, then they likely asked to see the wounds that the dog put on her body. Since my oldest aunt is saying that it didn't happen, this is a very simple and easy thing to prove. My middle aunt was very attentive to my grandma's help towards the end, and she had full access to all of my grandmother's medical records. She was pretty much in charge of all of her everything, all of her health care and whatnot. She would show other people. It was crazy because they had like this like delivery app sort of thing going on where she would have on her phone, what is grandma's status? Is she in surgery right now? Has the surgery been complete? Is she awake? They would put that on the app and she would show people this on her phone. That's crazy. Like I said, that's kind of like a delivery app. You know, has the package been delivered? Is it on its way? That sort of thing. That's like something that you see on FedEx or on your Amazon.com purchase or something like that. But it's this is the level that my middle aunt had towards the end of all this. So these things are very, very transparent. She can go and get these records. They're just lying around. My grandparents are not known for their organizational skills. They keep a lot of records, but they're kind of just lying around. You can kind of just go over there, grab them. So I've given her an opportunity to prove one way or the other, and she's refusing it and saying, I don't have the obligation. I never said that she did have the obligation. But she has a way to end this argument once and for all. Now, why is she acting this way? Why is she telling a story that doesn't make any sense? Why is she blaming the dead for, something that more than likely she did precisely the way that my grandma said? Why is she doing that? Because this narcissist thing in her head took control of her body and made her do something that she doesn't think is something that she would do. She sees herself as somebody who's nicer than this. And now she's attacking me because of what someone else said about about something that she did. In essentially a fit of psychosis. It's not precisely, this isn't temporary insanity brought on to somebody by somebody who's bipolar or something like that, or a schizophrenic episode. But that's, in a nutshell, from the way I understand it, that's precisely, essentially what's happening. So she's denying the story, telling a different story that obviously doesn't make any sense. Then she's throwing out these red herrings and throwing other people under the bus and saying very, very objectively mean things and objectively untrue things about other human beings to try to spread the blame around as much as possible, because that's what narcissists do. Like I said, I don't know if she's a narcissist, but this is narcissistic behavior. If you don't believe me, hey, the Violence Prevention Center in Belleville, Illinois is free. I went there, it was free. It's not free to me as a veteran, it's free to everybody. I was surprised too. So you can go verify it with them. This is narcissistic behavior. They can teach you the same kung fu they taught me. So here we go. Then she says, I've never been given anything but kindness and love to you and your brothers. Yet I get the same kind of snide disrespect as you give her, I guess my mother. Except my oldest little brother. She's saying that my oldest little brother has only given me love back. He's a good kid. And she says, hey, I made a lot of typos. Hopefully that you can see all that. Now she's using humor to try to, discharge the tension that she's already made in the room. Hopefully I'll pick on the humor part, and then I won't challenge her on any of the things that she's already said now. Now my brother, he's also been to jail. My brother is a good kid. But he's got in trouble for, spray painting some public property and whatnot and stuff like that. So she's essentially saying, you're not doing the right thing, whenever I'm just saying, I'm just doing what my doctors are telling me to do. But your brother is doing the right thing, even though the lawmakers literally disagree with her. Now my brother, I think he's only been to jail once, but so I'm not saying, hey, my brother's a bad guy because he's been to jail. I'm saying my brother's been to jail. End of sentence. No implications, no dog whistles, no extra. But she's got definitive evidence that this person who she's putting on a pedestal is not, behaving correctly. She's saying you should be more like your brother. And he's been to jail, right? So obviously, I'm on one side of the law. I was military police. My brother's on the other side of the law. He was in jail. Right? So here we go. Yet again, I point out to her, you cannot control what people say about you, ma'am. Everyone at your job must be talking about you just to stir shit up. Every time that they're putting her on the schedule, stuff like that. If each and every time that her name gets mentioned, it's someone tried to stir shit up, then that must be all of what her employer is doing. It makes no sense. I'm trying to use her own logic and show her the flaws. I'm trying to hold up a mirror to her, and that's because that's what my counselors did to me. All I can do, I'm like a parrot. All I can do is just repeat what they've done for me. But in the meantime, I've got my counselor, my family therapist. He's there. He's willing to work with her. She has his contact information. So she can get the yes. She does not have to take my word for it. Once again, if you feel that I'm mishandling the relationship between me and you, or anyone in my family therapist is ready to prove that one way or the other. Family therapists are the ones that decide whether or not a relationship in a family is correct or incorrect, is going to cause problems or is not going to cause problems. It's going to cause someone to commit suicide or is going to cause someone to get better. So it says, crazy is something that can be proven or not. No, it is not your responsibility to prove whether or not grandma was crazy. But it is a yes or no thing. At this point, you might as well say she had cooties. She's done bad shit, but we've all done bad shit to one end or the other. Essentially, I'm using the Bible quote, let he who has not sinned cast the first stone, right? But crazy is a label that she's putting on grandma, and it can be proven or disproven definitively. This is an objective measure that she can prove or disprove. And so can this thing where you're saying that your mom hated you. There's zero indications of this. Before I lived in this mobile home that I'm living in right now, there was a different mobile home here. And my aunt lived there. So she's already essentially gotten a house for free. Then there was a brand new house. She got a brand new mobile home dragged out here. And then the person that she was with didn't pay the payments, and eventually the whole house got repossessed. But she's already received the kindness from her mom. But just like my dad, there's nothing that is going to prove to her that this is love. But the thing is, you can prove love. You know, just like, have you ever watched House MD, the show? It's not the most, you know, apparently all of the episodes are based off of real cases, but it's not the most realistic doctor show in the world. Apparently that title belongs to Scrubs. Either way, whenever they put patients in MRIs on that show, they actually tell you, and this is true, they can tell you what part of the brain has blood in it whenever they're answering certain questions, and that proves whether or not they're lying. They can also prove when they're feeling love and when they're not feeling love. She has zero indication of this, and my grandma has passed on a while ago now, so you know there's no way to dig this up now, but she has zero indication of this. So I said that would definitely come up in her counseling. Oh, you love all your kids, but you don't love that one daughter? That would come up in her counseling. But no, my oldest aunt's just throwing out more red herrings. More. It's the shotgun approach. Let's see if he catches on to any of these things. And then starts arguing something based on opinion instead of repeatedly bringing up facts that can't be argued. So you can argue back and forth forever, but you're fighting at a disadvantage against people who actually decide what's crazy and what isn't. And you have the opportunity to end this fight. I said, hey, you know, your sister, who you are saying moved away when grandma was dying, which is objectively not true. No one knew that she would die when she did. She was at McDonald's when she stopped breathing. My middle aunt was just trying to get her life together and be independent, just like she always has. We all are doing that. That's just what kids are supposed to do. That's what we're all supposed to do. You know what really fucked me up for a lot of years is the late great Dr. Stephen Covey. In his book, The 7 Habits of Highly Effective People, he makes it seem like it's a step-by-step basis. He says if you don't become independent first, you can't reach what his ideal level of things is, which is interdependence. But in the meantime, there was zero indication that that's the case, and it took me a long time to, take somebody that so many actual government organizations, people around the world, believed in this and really respected this particular doctor's, his views on the world, his evidence and everything. It took me a very long time to look at that and say, okay, well, this actually doesn't make any sense. As Robert Kiyosaki of Rich Dad Poor Dad fame says, his number one way to success is OPM, other people's money. Does that sound independent to you? Maybe, but you got to stretch the definitions quite a bit to make this fit. So I'm saying, like, everybody's just trying to be independent. That's what kids are supposed to do. That's what my aunt is trying to do. She's trying to find a forever home. Each and every time that she goes somewhere, she always says it's the last place she's going to go. Then it doesn't work out because life hits you. Life hits you fast. Oh, Mike Tyson always said it one way. He says, everybody's got a plan until you get punched in the nose. I can't remember who else said it, but they put it this way. They said, if you want to make God laugh, make a plan. Shit happens. That's the reality of things. I don't fucking blame my middle aunt for moving around. Her kids don't blame my middle aunt for moving around. My cousins don't blame their mother for moving around, and they don't blame their father for moving around. They understand, but my oldest aunt, somehow or another, she doesn't get it. And she's saying things that are objectively not true about her, throwing other people under the bus in the middle of a conversation to try to see whether or not she can derail it and make it about something based on opinions. Even whenever at the start she's saying something that's objectively not true. Anyway, so once again, if you think that this is snide disrespect, then I've got a family counselor that can end that argument once and for all. He's got the yes or no. This is definitively by my all of my training says this is snide disrespect. He's doing this just to disrespect you, and he's being snide about it. But, of course, I request evidence. So she tries to move the conversation in a different way. And that whole thing above, accusing me of nearly driving my mother to suicide, you know that you literally have my medical records and can prove that I nearly died because of my mother. And encouraging her to get mental help goes against that. If you believe that I am mistreating my mother, go to the family counselor. If you believe my actions, which have been okayed by my mental health providers, are wrong, you have my medical records and their contact information. Call them. You work in a hospital. Prove it one way or the other. If you think more people should act like my little brother instead of acting like me, tell my medical providers that they are wrong. They might want some proof, but you can do this. You work in a hospital. You are in a better position to do this than anyone else in our whole fucking family. I'm doing the right thing. If you think that I'm not doing the right thing, you have my medical records. Tell my doctors that they're wrong and bring proof. Now again, I reiterate, you cannot control other people. Sorry. I love you unconditionally, just like my parents. Even when you accuse me of nearly killing my mother, when you literally have paperwork proving the opposite. She gives me a thumbs up. She says, I work in a hospital. I know about the HIPAA laws, which are privacy laws. No one is allowed to view or discuss your medical records and or health history without specific written consents. This is argument from authority. You know what really helps whenever you're talking to narcissists? Keeping around the list of logical fallacies, printing that off from the internet and having it there at all points in time, because they're going to use just about every one of them. So this is argument from authority, and it's again objectively incorrect. It says you have written consent. I literally gave you my medical records. You have them in your possession. I can click on the link that I gave you and view them myself. I know that you have these. She says, I can't control you or anyone else, but I can control me and make decisions about who I want to interact with. You keep saying that I and everyone else can call and talk to your doctors and counselors, which they can. Says, yes, you have control over who you call. She says, I cannot call your healthcare providers and get information about you. It's illegal for them and for me, which is, again, objectively incorrect. Said, you want my explicit permission? Done. Whatever form you need, I'll sign it. Just like my, if you were taking care of your old father with dementia or something like that, and you were designated as his carer, and you had the paperwork necessary to do all of that, then you could call his counselors and say, hey, is he still talking about the little green men in the house? And they could tell you yes or no. And then you could say, what's your advice about that? How can I get him to stop talking about little green men in the house? About his hallucinations? What can I do to help convince him that, these things, these hallucinations are not happening. You could absolutely do that. And I'm giving her full permission to do it. I'm saying if you have any sort of, if you want to dig up the paperwork, I'll sign it right away. She's again refusing to get any evidence whatsoever. And she's doing an argument from authority when she doesn't have the authority. So I challenge her. I said, or you can just come along for my sessions with them. A lot of it's over the phone, no driving required. Many veterans are in the care of others. Those carers can get information on their behalf. I know that is an absolute matter of fact. There are many people who are pushed in on wheelchairs to the Veterans Affairs medical centers, and it's their carer that goes up, gives their social security number, their serial number, whatever, and then gets their medication, and then make sure that they take it. They might not even be able to, their hands might be shaking or something. They might not even be able to open the little medicine bottles, or know which ones are which and what to take. So she tries again. You have to be directly involved in the person's care. For example, whenever I have patients that leave the sleep lab in the emergency room, I'm not allowed to follow up with or call to ask how things went because they're no longer my patient. Unless they come back to the sleep lab at a later date, then I can access their information again because it is pertinent to the care that I'll be giving. We have to do online in-services about this every day. I think she means invoices. I don't know. You can include me in a counseling session because then you're the one controlling that contact. So again, I give her the actual things. She can actually go and verify this herself. I said it's a piece of paperwork. If I care for my grandfather, who is also a veteran, he was in Vietnam. If I care for my grandfather and he signs away permissions, I can contact his doctors about his records. I just went through the training required to do this, but my grandfather refuses to go to the Veterans Affairs, so I can't work that position. I can't. It was something, there was an email that was sent out by the Veterans Affairs. They send out emails on a regular basis, and one of the emails they said, did you know that you can get paid to take care of a veteran? And I said, oh shit, I took my grandpa to, I drove him down, at least I drove him back from his colonoscopy, So I'm like, oh shit, I can get paid by the government to do that? Like, I was doing that out of the goodness of my heart. So I'm like, oh shit, yeah, it's no sweat off of his back. The money's not coming out of his account. I don't have to say, hey, grandpa, how about some fucking gas money? I don't have to do shit like that. No, I can just say, hey, I'm taking care of one of your veterans. Give me some money. That's great. So I went through the training and everything, and towards the end of it, they say, hey, if the veteran that you're caring for doesn't go to Veterans Affairs, the deal's off. I'm like, fuck. So I told him about it. And, he laughed about it because he's been avoiding the military his whole life. He didn't want to get drafted in the fucking first place. So now he avoids them at all costs, at all points in time. Whenever he went to have his colonoscopy, I told the guy at the desk, I said, my grandpa here, he could have saved a hell of a lot of money on medical records or medical bills if he would have just been going to Veterans Affairs this whole time. But given the Veterans Affairs track records about not having the best quality care over time and only fairly recently really improving that reputation I said, he'd be dead already. So it was like 6 in one hand, half a dozen in the other. And the guy behind the counter laughed, and my grandpa laughed, and I laughed. It's fucking true. My grandpa straight out of Vietnam, if he would have started going to the VA, they would have been like, oh shit, You got post-traumatic stress disorder? Have you fucking tried bloodletting and leeches? They've had a bad reputation for a very long time, and it's a reputation well the fuck deserved. If you want to go ahead and dig into that rabbit hole, it's free and ready for you to dig into. I'm not talking out of my ass. This shit has been well documented. Anyways. So I said, if you want to sit in on my sessions with my medical providers, done. If you want me to sign a paper, done. You have all the evidence that you need one way or the other. You have control over this. So I'm giving her the absolute facts of the situation again. She comes back. She says, look, man, I love you, but as I said before, I've been working on my life for all of my life. It's a struggle. I'm hurt. I don't typically lash out at people for that. I apologize, but I can feel completely sucker punched and blindsided by your flippant derision of my life and my mental health. It hurts. It's flippant because I'm offering her a family therapist to talk to. It's flippant because I repeated what I said, what I read in various books. The books that I've read from and I've received this information from, I've cited them in other conversations with my parents. That's why I didn't feel the need to cite them once more in that Father's Day message. They already know where I've gotten this information. So now she's coming in because I didn't cite my information, because these two people were the target recipients of this message. She's saying that it's flippant. Like fucking Sigmund Freud is flippant? The hell are you talking about? Oh man, Sigmund Freud, God rest his soul, he was the most rudest fucking bastard in the world. No, he wasn't. He's the fucking father of psychology. He's in every goddamn textbook. You could go ahead and start down the Psychology 101. It's the fucking first thing. I think they say the word Sigmund Freud before you fucking sit down in your assigned seat the first fucking day. And I never have gone to a college class that has assigned seats, but one way or the other. She says, I have a life and a job. To do joint counseling or sit in on that kind of thing requires planning. You talk about it all the time, but don't, as far as I know, make any attempt to make it happen. Coordinate a time that works for me. I'm willing, but don't hurt me. I'm fragile. I can't take it. What will happen instead is that I'll stop talking to you and avoid the hurt. It's not meant as a threat. I want to clarify that because it's too much room for misunderstanding, and texting and other written forms of communication with words is my personal preference. The reason that narcissists actually like, words instead is because they're not going to agree to do all this shit with a recorder there, recording the words. They don't like that. Whenever it's written down, there's a reason that lawyers and everything like everything in writing, because then you can't go back on these things. Now we know, the viewer, that she threw her sister under the bus saying something that's objectively not true, and virtual signaling with her dead mother as a MacGuffin here. This is the kind of shit that she will do. She'll throw anybody, she'll use anybody as a weapon, anything as a weapon, to hurt other people. Because that's what she wants to do. That is what she is trying to do. You can't argue about it. This is exactly what is happening. Don't believe me? Violence Prevention Center, Belleville, Illinois. It's free. Right? Go to them, argue with them, bring some fucking evidence. They're going to want some proof that they're doing something wrong. And she says, I have a life and a job. Now, a lot of times I come across people that say, I've got a life and a job, and that's their excuse for not improving their life. For not doing something that would be healthy for them, whether mentally or physically or whatever. But I had a life and a job whenever I was active duty in the military, and of course I had to do things that was good for my physical health at a bare minimum. Each time that there was some sort of breakdown, I had to go to the chaplain. That was their sort of liaison in between me and a mental health provider and everything, that's the first stop. If the chaplain can't handle it, it's on to psychiatrist, counselor, psychologist, whatever. So it is what it is. So at a bare minimum, I already had to do the physical things. Now that's what we're talking about here. We're talking about some mental health related things. Time and again, I get this excuse from people. Well, actually, I got a job and a life and everything, but I've got a life. Does she have a life and I don't have a life? You know, that's an opinion-based thing. But thing is, I've got the same 24 hours that she does. Now, the big accusation comes whenever people say, you're just a college student. And I am. I'm just a college student. That's all I am. And then they act like a job is harder than college. Now, there's fucking infinite evidence that people choose the easiest path. If it was easier to go to college than it is to get a job, people would go to college, especially in countries where going to college is free. You show up, they give you a dorm room, they feed you, they water you for a couple of years. If it's that fucking easy, then it's a 4-year vacation. Hey, stay in for longer, man. Get a master's degree. That's a 6-year vacation. Stay in for even longer. It's a PhD. That's an 8-year vacation. But they know that that's horseshit. People choose the easiest thing. In fact, fairly recently they had the ego depletion studies and they kind of redid everything. I think I was watching a YouTube video from, I think, Mr. Gamer GG, something like that, which is a weird name because the guy's an actual clinical psychiatrist. I would have left with like doctor something or the other, right? So, but he's an actual clinical psychiatrist. He was talking about this and the ego depletion studies and whatnot, people's willpower. Turns out that the people who are successful at a diet, the first thing that they fucking do is they throw away all the junk food in their house. Bam, it's over with. They're doing the easiest thing. They're not coming in with some Herculean willpower and like going into a bakery every day and never eating a single cake. That's not what they're doing. The people who are successful in diets, they get rid of non-diet foods. That's the first step. People do the easiest thing. The guy who set the bench press world record quite a few years ago, he had his bench press in his kitchen so that he had to trip over the fucking thing in order to get to the damn the refrigerator and get him something to eat or something. He put it in his way on purpose, and every now and again he would just crank out a couple reps. And he said, I think it was like right after he got up before breakfast that he set the world record. This was quite a few years ago. It was about 10 plus years ago I was hearing about this, but so you can verify this on your own. But people do the easiest thing. If it's easier to have a job than it is to go to college, then people would go to college. Now here's me. I've done both. So this whole, I've got a job and a life, and that's the reason why I don't take care of these things. And this is the reason why I don't dedicate time to this. It's not an excuse. It's literally, objectively, not an excuse. There was a semi-recent TED Talk about passive suicidality in college students because it's how ungodly difficult that it truly is. Prove me wrong. Think it's easy? Do it yourself. Go. You have the chance to go and get some evidence. Don't take my word for it. So she's saying that it isn't a threat, but it is. She's saying, agree with me, or I'm going to leave. That's in a nutshell, essentially, what she's saying. Agree with me, or I'm going to get out of here. You're going to lose your aunt. Stop taking the advice of your doctors, or I'm going to leave. And again, whenever I wasn't taking the advice of my medical professionals, I nearly died. She's saying, with all the evidence and medical records put into the sentence, at the end of the day, what she's literally saying is, I'd rather you be dead than have you disagree with me. That's a rough sentence. But whenever you've got all the evidence and everything, and you can put it all together, that's precisely what's honestly being said here. And then they accuse you of a whole bunch of things that they have the evidence that it's literally incorrect, objectively so. That's rough. This is why this is a life or death thing. This video could save lives. It literally can. Objectively. You can't make any argument against that, because it's objectively true. Moving on. I said, if you think that my derision of your mental health is flippant, you have the contact from my family therapist. I've bent over backwards to coordinate. She said, oh, by my knowledge, you haven't done anything to coordinate. I fucking gave her at the start of this. I gave her the contact information from my family therapist. She said, oh, you don't do shit to ever coordinate this. She knows that that's objectively wrong. Again, she's got this villain in her head that she's put in my place, and she's hanging on to it with dear life. She didn't have a smidge of evidence that I am this villain, but she's hanging on to it with dear life. It was her first reaction, and she's trying to make it her last reaction. She's trying to hold on to that. She doesn't want to second guess what was up there in her head, because that's not what narcissists do, right? Like I said, I don't know if she's a narcissist, but this is definitely narcissistic behavior. Don't believe me? Violence Prevention Center, Belleville, Illinois. It's free. So, I said, I've bent over backwards to communicate. Tell me a time. We'll start nailing down what the family therapist can incorporate. If you think that there's room in misunderstanding in text and other forms of written communication, you can run it through dozens of channels with therapists and counselors for free. And I've given most of those resources to my mother as well. If you'd like me to forward all of those emails and messages to you, no problem. But you work in a hospital, just call over a therapist on break. If you can't find one on break, or they're off shift in the evening, the Violence Prevention Center in Belleville is free, and you can talk with them over the phone. I said, if you believe that I'm deliberately trying to hurt you, you have plenty of ways to prove it one way or the other. My actions have been okayed by my mental health professionals. You have their contact information if you disagree with them. If you're fragile, they are free. The time it took you to text me, you could have texted them and gotten stronger. You accused me of driving my mother nearly to suicide while you held actual medical records that the opposite occurred. That hurts, definitively. You can actually prove that that sort of accusation hurts other human beings. Again, how would you feel if somebody said, you're fucking killing your mother? How would you feel if you said that? Now, you feel that inside, that sort of guilt and everything, that shock inside. I'm fucking killing my mother? Holy shit, what can I do? Narcissists cannot feel that. They're empathy impaired. They don't feel empathy at the same level as us. So whenever they're told with 600 plus pages of evidence from 3 separate organizations full of mental health care providers that they're killing their son, they can't give a shit. Cannot. Empathy impaired. They cannot give a shit. It is not within their ability to do so. They're not psychopaths. They're just empathy impaired. So they don't feel that. That's when you know it's clinical level narcissism. Whenever you can tell them with fucking oodles of proof, you're murdering the person that you said you care about, and they, in one way or the other, indicate that they don't give a single shit, and then continue to try to murder the person that they fucking told you that they care the most about. That's whenever you've got this undeniable proof that this is outside of your hands. You got to get a mental health care professional. They got to talk to them. They got to tell the truth. It's the thing. Mental health care professionals, they're not lie detectors, but whenever somebody has, just like before with my grandma, if somebody has been attacked, they act differently than somebody who's pretending to be attacked. They can see all the, they got the DSM-5 and whatever. They can see all these things. So I said, what I'm doing is okayed by mental health professionals. What you're doing is accusing me of the opposite of the truth while holding that truth in your hands. So I love you unconditionally, same as my parents. I'm going to keep doing what my doctors told me. I nearly died whenever I didn't. You literally have the proof of that. So she says, okay, I'm being kind of an asshole, but when you repeat something to the point of tedium, it starts to sound like I'm Matthew, and I've learned to be perfect, and I can be better than you. And you can be better if you just follow all the footsteps of my journey so that you can learn to be almost as perfect as me. I'm off this coming Thursday. We can do something by the afternoon, by phone or in person, whatever makes you happy. I said, hey, all I'm doing is going to a hospital. I go to a hospital as a patient. You go to a hospital as a worker. I'm doing what everyone does when they're sick. If you feel as if I'm meaning offense in my communications to you, you have my family counselor's contact information. I'll let the counselors know about your off time, then I'll see if they got something lined up. So this tactic where I'm going back to the facts over and over again and refusing to be pulled down into all of these opinion-based arguments that she's trying to get me into, it's called the broken record. It's literally written down on a piece of paper that you can go and see at the Violence Prevention Center in Belleville, Illinois for free. It's literally one of the tactics to deal with narcissists and abusers. And it's called the broken record. I'm literally following word by word, step by step, what my medical professionals have told me, and you don't have to take my word for it. You can go there in person and literally see it. It's called the broken record. This is what they've recommended to me. This is the kung fu that they've made me practice for over a year of daily therapy. You don't have to take my word for it that I'm just doing what my doctors told me to. You can independently verify this. Don't fucking take my word for it. Who the fuck am I? You can independently verify this. So she's getting in one last jab, still trying to blame this on me when she's literally said things that are objectively untrue. She's just still trying to hurt me in any way that she can, throw out any punch that she can. She still feels hurt because her name was mentioned twice within that Father's Day message. Only 2 of those skip forwards was her. The other 2 was my little brother. I don't want him to get wrapped up in this bullshit. If he wants to get wrapped up, he can get wrapped up. But he's just going to hear the same thing from me, the broken record. Here's the family therapist. Here's my medical records. I will give it to him as well. I mentioned her name twice. She uses ad hominem twice. She calls me names twice. She tries to blame me multiple times. She tries to blame her mother. She tells a story that doesn't make sense. She tells several stories that are objectively not true. She accuses me of nearly murdering another human being while she's holding the evidence that the exact opposite situation is true. She's trying to hurt me. She feels hurt because her name came up twice, 2 times, in a message that wasn't directed at her. So she's still trying to hurt me. And all I'm doing is what my doctor said to do. He says, oh, you're acting high and mighty. Fuck you and the horse you rode in on. But I'm just doing precisely, step by step. You, the viewer, can independently verify this without my medical records or anything. You can go and see this shit in person. It's called the broken record. It's a tactic against abusers and narcissists. So she's still trying to get in jabs. She's still trying to hurt me. Whenever, again, I've offered her the services of a family counselor to the tune of hundreds of dollars of taxpayer money that I fought for 4 years of my life to have access to. Now she's a veteran herself. She's never used the VA services for one reason or the other, Veterans Affairs. So she does actually have access to the exact same things. But I went through hell and high water to schedule this and everything. Every time I'd ask for it, they would say, they'd transfer me to a different department. It took months for me to actually schedule this. So I am, doing her a favor by using my benefits so she doesn't have to use hers. But, hundreds of dollars and hours of my time and years of my life to gain access to that benefit. And yet she's still trying to hurt me. All I'm doing is offering help to her. All she's doing is trying to hurt me. See? It's very different. This is very, very clear, very crystal clear. There's a good guy here, there's a bad guy here. And if you don't believe me, the scientists. What's the scientific consensus? What's the academic consensus? What's the lawmaking consensus? What's the medical professionals' consensus in this regard? It's very, very crystal clear. Who's right, who's wrong here? I'm doing what my doctor said. She's doing the opposite of what my medical record says. She's doing the opposite of what my doctors have said. Literally the opposite. You can blame me all you want here. I'm going to keep listening to my doctors. Same thing I told her, telling you right now. I'm going to keep listening to my doctors. She literally has all of my medical records proving that I nearly died whenever I didn't. I don't want to die. I want to live. I'm going to keep doing what they told me to do, regardless of this extreme level of backlash from the people I thought cared about me at some point in time in my life. People who are close to me. People who I love, I respected. As fellow family members, as fellow veterans. People who I continue, as you've seen in this video, continue to try to help them. Yeah, they don't want my help, but she's not refusing. She's not saying, I don't want to fucking talk to your family therapist. She doesn't want to. There's nothing I can do. I can't sit here and say, try this pizza. And then she says, I don't want to fucking try your pizza. And I say, try this pizza. That's just me being a fucking pushy dick. But when I say, here's my family therapist, she's not saying no. She's just doing the precise opposite of what my medical professionals are talking about. Then this is something else, right? By the way, just in case you're wondering, I said, hey, my oldest aunt, she lived in this location that I'm living in right now, and she lived in a mobile home, and then it wasn't good enough, so they pushed it to the side, they bought another mobile home, and then it got repossessed. So what am I living in now? Am I sitting here under the blue sky right now? No, this is my uncle bought another mobile home, got it put in here, and I'm living in his old mobile home. He said he didn't want it anymore, said I could have it. So that's where I'm living. Just in case you're just like, is this guy talking? Like, does this guy have to like put a tarp over his head so he didn't get rained on? What's going on here? That's not what I'm hearing in the background. No, this is the third mobile home on this property. The first one's still here. It's they kind of pushed it off in the forest with like a bulldozer or something. I'm gonna show it to you. It's missing at least 2 walls. keep the rain off of your head if you kind of like sit towards the middle so you don't get wind driven rain. But besides that, I don't trust it. Anyways, so final piece. Once she gave me the thumbs up, I went to bed. As you can see, it was, let's see, it was 4 in the morning. So I went to bed. Hell and high water to get to bed after receiving these types of messages at 1 o'clock in the morning. Hell and high water to get to bed. But over time I managed it. I had some fitful sleep last night. Of course I did. Anybody would. But I put in this last part because it dropped the bombshell. She dropped the bombshell. Thank you. I'm at work right now, so I gotta go. Sorry. So I'm not too far behind on my work by morning. Good night. This whole conversation happened while she was at work. You think I could argue with her like this in the middle of a fucking college class? Sure, if I didn't give a single shit about it. If I was taking a college class about, underwater basket weaving or some shit like that, or what I already know. If I was taking a college class on how to be a yellow belt in judo, at some point in time, I earned my yellow belt in judo before I joined the Navy active duty. It's like, so if I'm taking a college class about that, I just need the credits, then sure, I can just fucking do whatever. I can do this thing for her, but not in a fucking pre-med class, not in a stuff like this. Ask my... Go to Senior Reserve Officer Training Corps, the office at Southern Illinois University, Edwardsville. Ask anybody if they could have a conversation like this in the middle of a morning run, man. This is not the kind of shit that I could do in college. So, I've got a life, I've got a job, I can't be doing all this. By the way, after over 3.5 hours of this, at least I about 2.5 hours, right? A half an hour to get to 2 o'clock, 2 more hours to get to 4 o'clock. So over 2.5 hours she's been arguing with me at work. I can't do that during a morning run. I can't do that while I'm doing push-ups in front of the gym and at 5 in the morning. I can't do that maintained stride while I'm doing ruck marches out there. You can ask any of the cadets. Show them this video if they'll sit still long enough. You ask any of the cadets, hey, could you do that in the middle of a run? I couldn't do that when I'm in college. Saying, I got a job in life, that's why I can't dedicate this attention to it. I'm doing more. I'm literally doing more. It's like I always tell people, and they're like, you're building a cabin out there, but it's taking you a long time. I say, yeah, where's your cabin? I know plenty of college students. 0 of them that I've been able to run into have a cabin that they built. So, same thing I tell them, suck the farts out of my butthole one at a time, I'm just... So, I've taken my, I'm doing it. I'm doing it. You're not. Say, how fast are you going? Everybody, I'm going faster than everybody that's still on the couch. Still on the planning phase. That's how fast I'm going. Anyways, so that's it. That's the end of all this. Like I said, this whole thing, this is not to put my oldest aunt on blast. Here you go, viewer. What's the name of my oldest aunt? What's her name? What's her last name? How are you going to find her? Can you find her? What's the method that you're going to go about to harass her? If you're angry right now over what she's done to a veteran of 2 military branches, how are you going to exact your revenge? Can you? You can. If you're a private investigator or something like that, you can find her, but I have not made it easy. Because that's not the point of all of this. This is not something to attack the people involved in this. It's not something to say, look how fucking smart I am, and these dummies are saying shit and all this kind of garbage. And I'm not like airing out my my family drama and just being a trashy guy. Hey, my cousin said this and she's a fucking bitch, you know. I'm not saying shit like that. You know, that's not the point of all this. The objective facts of the situation is I nearly died because my ex-wife and my parents treated me like this. And now my oldest aunt is getting in on it. It's her turn, apparently. She's stepping up to the back and oh, she's swinging. Again, put yourself in my shoes. How would you feel? Somebody said, you're fucking killing your mom. Do anything in your power to stop killing your mom, wouldn't you? That's rough stuff. That's a rough thing to hear. You don't gotta take my word for it. You don't have to put yourself in my shoes. You can see what kind of a narcissistic attack that is, what kind of abuse that is. Whenever someone's telling you something that's objectively untrue, you can head down to the Violence Prevention Center of Belleville, Illinois. They can give you all the science. This is what happened whenever people are abused. Remember Jeannie? Jeannie was that lady who was, she was just put in a different room. That's all she was as a kid. Just put somewhere else. They fed her, they watered her and everything. By all means, she should have been good to go, right? She never recovered. As far as I remember with her, she never recovered. I can't remember. Last time I checked on her, I think she was, she either had the mind of somebody who was 5 years old or the mind of somebody who was in 5th grade. I know that number 5 was in there somewhere. But you can go on the terrible case of Jeannie. It's weird, right? She's not getting beaten or abused or anything like that. Not from what I can remember about the case. But that's the effect. She never recovered. As far as I remember, she never recovered. That old, I think it was a 1920 study with a bunch of newborn babies. All the newborn babies were fed. Some of them were held, some of them weren't. The ones that weren't held died. They had to call off the study. We know the effects that abuse has on other people. This science has been done to death. You don't have to take my word for it. I'm giving you the opportunity to go and do it yourself, to look up the stuff yourself. Here are the people. Here's where they work. Here are their names if I have them. Here are the people that you can call and verify all by yourself. Yes or no. What is the effects of abuse on the human body? They'll show you all the studies and everything if you want to. No problem at all. No sweat off their back. They're nerds about this kind of stuff. They'll talk about it all day. It's like a little kid talking about Pokemon or some shit. That's probably old. I don't know if little kids talk about Pokemon no more. Anyways, so that's the end of all this. Sorry it took so long and everything, but as I said, it's a life-saving video. Doing the best as I can out here.